hope those guns really are dropship incoming. Show them what you can do. Payload online. Initiating startup sequence. It's going to need a few minutes to get charged up.
You really think that's gonna
Of course it's going to work.
inspires confidence, doesn't it?
Null sector forces are inbound to your position.
Oh, dang it. I meant to...
Not as young as they used to be.
Watch out for those slices. They aren't as strong, but they tear up the payload.
I can't hear you. Need to keep it safe.
There we go. See? Like I said, it just needed a moment to get warmed up. So it's ready to move out? Not quite yet. I should have known. Team, get ready for another wave of attacks. Very effective. So welcome back. Speed.
There.
Claudia? What was that sound?
Seems like we hit another little snag.
Define little snag.
Forget about it. Defend the payload. It just needs a little more time.
Yeah, audio is playing on my end now as well. Sorry for the weird start right there, folks. I thought that Gabe was already getting things set up and he wasn't just yet fully set up and live. But here we are. Drop frames detected 77% over the last 2 minutes a few seconds ago. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to talk to somebody about that. Somebody who's a little bit more... But yes, hello everybody. On my end, I am streaming with a new guy who I never met named GabeisGunk, who I was introduced through the Incredible Aspie. And might I say just hello to everybody on Gabe's end over there on Twitch. Yes, I'm a conservative libertarian political commentary, and that's basically the gist of what I do. So yeah.
Will you explain what a dark? I know you basically did by saying a conservative libertarian, but will you explain what the dark conservatarian is? Because I'm already getting questions. I know what it is, but I know that you'd rather do it in your words.
Well, conservatarian is basically somebody who finds themselves in the middle, in between a libertarian and conservative. I guess I'm finding myself less and less sympathetic towards conservatives on some issues, but typically speaking, conservatarians disagree with libertarians when it comes to immigration and a lot of times abortion. But then they also disagree with conservatives when it comes to interventionism and sexual and drug rights and stuff like that. So... yeah, it's sort of that in-between between those two beliefs, sets of beliefs, or what is stereotypically associated with those beliefs. Of course, conservatarians are not like a full-on anarchist or anarcho-capitalist or anything like that, but all the same. And I guess the biggest reason why I still find myself in line with conservatism, or conservatarianism more specifically, is because abortion is the one topic that I'm definitely can solidly call myself conservative, although I would also say that there is some libertarian arguments against abortion at the same time, but we'll get more into that when we get into the topics.
Yeah, I think we'll cover like most of the distinctions in the topics that we specifically have to go over today. we picked, I guess, the broadest range of things that you could possibly go for. So I'm sure we'll cover it all,
Mm-hmm.
at least in terms of uh, the intersection between like social and economic stuff. At least, I guess we're not debating anything particularly uh, economic, but
Yeah.
it'll still come up
So,
a little bit.
what were you about to say?
Oh, that was all I was gonna say. I finished that
Mm.
whole thought.
Okay. Yeah, you mind like giving me the browser for your end of the stream as well, so I can like take a
Oh,
peek every now and then,
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
like DM it to me. And I guess we'll
Yeah,
open up with the topic that that we said that we kind of wanted to. Well, at least I said that I kind of wanted to open up on because I wanted to like get it sort of out of the way. Because honestly, I guess you framed it up as gender identity is one of those topics I
yeah,
don't care about so much. When I first got introduced slowly into the topic, I guess it might have been late 2016, but it was definitely 2017 that I was introduced into the topic, and that there's actually a site out there that believes that there is, in fact, more than two genders, that gender is a spectrum and not a binary. And
yeah,
at first, I was kind of standoffish. I was like, "What the heck is this? Please go away, whatnot." But then I actually gave it a little bit more thought, and I was like, maybe I'll give it somewhat of a chance. And I got engaging, well, not so much a debate myself because I did not have an actual full-on debate talking about the subject, but
yeah,
nonetheless, when I got actually watching the debates of some of my compatriots over the internet engaging with far leftists in particular, not to say that you are a far leftist yourself, I do not know how you sit on this political spectrum, but
yeah,
nonetheless, debating far lefties when it comes to gender. I go watching it, go trying to hear if there's like evidence for it and so forth. And a lot of it, not to say that the lefties in those debates were completely devoid of evidence, but a lot of it
yeah,
seemed to boil down to a whole bunch of social factors of look of how oppressed these people are, which might be, which would be arguably true in a whole lot of cases that
uh-huh,
I guess we'll get into. But the whole idea itself of gender spectrum versus binary, the science behind it, that does not get a whole lot into it. It just gets to boiling down into personal attacks. You know, you're a freaking transphobe for daring to even just merely disagree with the idea of a gender spectrum, and that's what kind of turns me off a bit.
yeah.
Like,
Well,
I come in with an open
I guess
mind, but as soon
the
as I get
yeah,
insulted in that sort of way, I'm all like, no, screw off. Because honestly, ultimately, I don't want any laws involved with this subject. I don't want any pronoun laws. I don't want any laws restricting people from self-acclaiming themselves to be of a non-binary gender, or to
hmm,
prevent them from taking transgender surgeries and so forth. But yeah.
yeah. Well, okay. So in regards to like, since you don't really have any issues with people identifying those ways or expressing their gender in those particular ways, then I don't know that we're gonna have too terrible much disagreement on this subject. I would say though, like the idea, I guess what I'd want to like explore more with you is the idea that it's gender is a binary, because I have some contestations with that from a philosophical standpoint. And science sort of backs it up with the bimodal expression, even in sex. So I guess what I would ask you is how you define first male and female and then man and woman.
Well, typically, I guess to boil it down is obviously genitalia, genitals is not the only factor because literally within when somebody gets a transition, they're not always going to, especially not at first, get the transition in with their what they have in between their legs, and yet people will still, at least socially speaking, accept them as the gender that
Oh
they
yeah,
say that they want to
yeah,
be. But that
yeah.
would be a
But
starting
I'm
basis.
asking you. Oh, okay. So with genitals, but
I'm
so
saying that
if a
that would be a starting point.
starting base.
Yeah. I guess what I would find to be defining of what gender you are is it is primarily of with what you are born as. But if you do start to make the transition, if you find it absolutely necessary, because I don't know, you were born mixed gender, mixed between two genders, like you're born a male, well, overall a male, but you have some female organs and whatnot, or born female and born with at the same time some male organs, and you want to make the transition because of that, and decide to call yourself the opposite gender, well then, yeah, I guess we'll grant the benefit of the doubt and say that you're that gender.
So if they were born with a mix, then how do you determine which one they were? How would you say that it's the opposite, that they're declaring themselves as the opposite gender if they were in between? Like if it was a mixture, where are you drawing the line?
Well, if they're born at, well, when they're first born, they're not going to be able to know hardly the difference between male and female anyways. You know, being a baby and all that, they're not going to know the hardly difference between male and female. Much less would they know whether or not they want to call themselves a different gender than what they were originally born with. So starting point, I guess, would be that the doctors, on the birth certificate write up what gender it is that is shown between their legs that they are of,
Oh, okay, but if they're so what you're saying is that the genitalia is the most important in terms of you making the definition.
Sorry, what?
So for you, for your definition, the genitalia is the most important aspect.
It's the biggest thing, but I don't find it to be exclusively the only thing, because literally Blair White, as far as I know, still has the male, genitals between their legs, but at the same time we still call Blair a female ultimately. And there is still the, I think what would really help trans people is if they ultimately did get the genital surgery to get the opposite genitals from what they were born with.
I'm sorry, because it sort of seems like I'm interrupting you, and I don't mean to, but I
don't think you did a hard interruption on me. You're good.
I feel a little bit like you're combining both your definition and then like the outside societal definition, and that might be where some of the contention and conflict is occurring. Because like you agreed, you would call Blair White like a woman, and you, though I can't remember if she did get SRS, but it actually doesn't matter in the context of it.
There's also the fact that she looks the part too. I mean, just to be honest.
But so there seems to be other aspects to your definition of what is like a man and a woman, because like if a cisgendered man lost his penis and like scrotum in an accident, would he no longer be a man in your definition? And I'm assuming the answer is no, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't. It'd be a no, or they'd be a eunuch at most.
Yeah, but I mean, so.
But I mean, there's also a whole lot in regards of DNA too. Like, do you have X chromosome or XY chromosome? And
yeah, but go ahead.
On.
My bad on that one.
Okay, well, there's also the fact that we are like talking more specifically about gender binary versus spectrum, not necessarily what determines the hard line for when a person is fully transitioned into the opposite gender. I mean, if I was to put a line, I would say that someone like Yaniv, who makes hardly any effort in their transition, I would not. And not to mention also the factoid that Yaniv is pretty much of a piece of shit who gone doing predatory type stuff upon young kids to where I have no respect for them. But even outside of that, it seems like that he's making almost no effort and is really exploiting the transgender identity for his own gain, So, in other words, a trans trender almost.
Well,
probably not even a trans trender. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, with Yaniv, it's a little strange. So for you, you do see it have a more open mind to like the spectrum idea. Then, is sort of what it sounded like there.
Sorry, say it again. I'm
Like,
peeking over at the chat every now and again.
like you wouldn't really put it in a hard binary. You would put it in more of the bimodal idea that there's like these factors and expressions that we associate with the gender, and once like these have been expressed, it goes from one to the other, and sometimes there can be an interlacing of the two, both within natural cisgendered people and then with people that have identified like their gender socially. Correct?
I'm not so sure if I absolutely follow what you're trying to say there.
I guess what I'm asking you in the simplest terms is, do you don't personally think that it's like a hard binary for gender?
I guess not really, because like even though was born male and still possibly has the dick, does look female for the most part and is taking the hormones and all that other stuff.
Yeah,
But
and if you didn't
I would
know Blair
still
White,
I would still say
um,
ultimately, generally speaking, though, it's still between male and female. I mean, because there's only two different types of chromosomes: X chromosome and XY. Well, excuse me. I think it's like XX and XY. If I there's no WY
well,
or AY chromosome or any other letter
yeah, yeah,
chromosome
but
out there.
there are other expressions of the XY combination. Like there's XXY and then XY females that are born with female genitalia or XY.
I would
Um,
say that those are intersex people who would probably do best for their own health if they were to go ahead and do the process of getting themselves into one of those two genders, be it male or
yeah,
female. I mean,
yeah, but so
I
like,
guess it's still a possibility that you might be comfortable being that non binary intersex. I don't know for absolute certain. But I think it should be like done completely sociologically.
oh
What we
yeah, no,
do
so
in regards to
I
gender, no
agree. I
authoritarian
agree.
regulations or anything like that. Sorry, go
I,
on. What
I,
did you say?
so I agree that it's like a socially like gender is socially constructed, and because like even with when you try and tie
Mm,
it to male and female, like some people will, well, you've kind of already said that with the intersex, that they should just socially identify with the more like you've said that it's a social, like that there is utility in socially constructing the like pronouns that you use and the way that you present.
I
Like we
don't think I've
find
ever.
value in that.
I don't see of how I've at all implied that gender is a social way that
Well,
it
no,
could be utilized in different
yes,
sort of ways,
social ways, yes.
but I don't say that it's a social construct. I mean, it's more of a construct of science and a construct of society. I mean, if any,
Can you
the
point
only
to me where gender exists in science?
what
Can you give me an example of where gender exists in science?
the XX and XY
That's not
chromosomes and the
gender.
genitalia and so forth, those are the stuff
Yeah,
that we use
yeah.
to define
So
the
those are
different two.
expressions. Those are physical expressions that we can point to and that we have grouped into gender based on the way that they normally line up. Because there are examples where these do not line up, even within the chromosomal groupings.
Well, more specifically, those are the two measuring factors that we use to determine the two different genders.
Socially,
I
because we've grouped them based on those two things.
I don't know what you mean by that. I mean, we've invented language and we've invented the two words male and female, and
Yes,
I don't
in
see
an
of how
attempt
it's.
to describe a physical phenomena, but that physical phenomena does not occur 100% of the time in relation to those.
Of course not. I mean, there's like I said earlier, there are those who are born with intersex, but that's not the
Yeah,
general rule within
Yeah,
within
but
science and
but the
society.
fact that you break no that you break that rule, like that rule is played out through language, means that it's like a social construct because language is socially constructed.
Right. I mean, I
And it
guess I guess I'm having
what
a hard time differentiating language and gender from each other and trying to explain the differentiation between the two. I would have to find a better way to word the differentiation between language and gender. But just to put it in layman's perspective, in a layman's way, I don't see it as being a social construct, really.
Yeah, but okay. You would have to demonstrate how
I
the
mean,
gender, which is constructed through language, is separate from that it exists continuously. You can say that there are people with chromosomes, and I agree with you 100%. There's also people with chromosomes outside of that. So that already puts a chink in the binary part. And then, furthermore, like genitalia doesn't always map perfectly to those chromosomes, which is another flaw in like saying that it's binary. I agree that there are in fact XY people and XX people, and I agree that there's people with penises and people with vaginas, and then people sometimes without either. Though that's a more uncommon abnormality. Um, but that the words that we use for man and woman and he and she don't always express that, because if you didn't know who Blair White was and you saw Blair White in person, what would the first word you most likely would use to describe her be?
she.
Yeah. See?
Just
So
immediately put. I mean, but if I was to run across, okay, never mind. What's your further point in that?
well that like there is a social construction component of it. Like there is a language component, that it isn't grounded to those like hard physical characteristics of the universe. It's not as tied concretely to that in the way that most lay people use it, whether
Hmm.
they realize it or not. Because like you can even misgender cis people who were born like I know this is anecdotal, but because this is covering like a subjective thing, and I know that you most likely have had an experience where you've seen someone that was born a girl and was very masculine and they identified as a girl, but like people in school called them a he, or vice versa with a guy that appeared very feminine but identified as a guy. Like it does happen, which is fine, because it shows that there is like other features that we take into account when we assign in our brains what we define like as a girl or a guy in like the immediate sense.
Hmm. Now, this to the conversation that Blair White and Ben Shapiro were both having with each other. Like Ben Shapiro was going on about how he insists that there's no such thing as a true trans person or whatever. But then within the social interaction with other people, he'll just grant the benefit of the doubt. A person who is like I don't know who is trans and identifies as she, he'll just be mannerly enough to call them she, especially if
Yeah.
they do look the part more like.
Ben Shapiro is a funny example because sometimes in his interviews with Joe Rogan, he'll try and intentionally misgender, and you can see him switching over and using the their identified pronouns unintentionally as he's like describing them. Like when Caitlyn Jenner was big in the news
Well,
and that Joe Rogan interview was happening.
I think with a lot of people nowadays, especially those who like claim themselves to be right wingers and were raised up as right wing in some fashion or another, it's going to still be it is still like a good portion of time going to have those slips of the mind that they express with it vocally. Oh, sorry, I
Oh
just
no, I
misgendered
was
that
saying it
person.
the other. Yeah, I was saying it the other way. He was trying to say like he for Caitlyn Jenner, and then kept accidentally slipping into she,
Mm-hmm.
because the way in which their identity is expressed is the way that we more typically associate it with. And like um it just shows that there's expressions in of that a person has that we associate more with like what we call man and woman, that are not that are on ranges themselves, like a very muscly beardy dude, we're like that's a manly man, and like the blonde hair curvy woman is like that, damn, that's a woman, you know, like we even within the range of that, when people like are set on that binary, sort of show that it's a spectrum within that binary. And like you said, like it does seem, or like you sort of said, is like they're personally for you, like the binary thing seems a little too hard cut for what like the actual expression and like real events or real physical characteristics that occur are,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
There was something in my chat that I was kind of reading.
Okay, yeah, I mean,
You want me to read it off?
if you want to, I'm open to that.
All
Yeah.
right. Metal Minister says, by that logic, if someone says 2 plus 2 equals 5, that's simply another aspect of the truth. Intersex is an irregularity in the norm. It's a medical condition, not another gender. Which I'm not trying to. I don't know who he's addressing that to. I'm not necessarily trying to
He's
say that.
definitely trying saying that to me.
I guess so. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying myself that that is another gender right there. I'm saying that that's
Okay.
a case of where that they're going to have to get themselves some help in to fully solve that. What they would most likely see as a problem.
Yeah, well, if
I
they
don't
saw it
know
as a
how
problem,
off. What?
yeah, but I mean, that's assigning a lot of weight to it because they might not see it as a problem. And actually, if I could respond to him, I don't know why he used the 2 plus 2 equals 5 as a correlation to something that actually happens. Like physically, it really does happen that there's chromosomal abnormalities. 2 plus 2 equals 5 isn't something that happens. Like he's making a false analogy there.
I think there's a whole lot of room for a whole lot of to be made, be it accidentally or not, within these debates.
Oh yeah, no, that's fair. But I mean, I like to see everyone make stronger, better arguments. So if he doesn't make that sort of
I guess
comparison,
somebody
again,
was equivalence that if you are born with an extra finger on your hand. Well, this is during one of the gender debates that I was listening to a long time ago, making the equivalence that if you are born with an extra finger, that does not mean that you have that you don't have a hand. That hand is no longer a hand. I mean, and I was
yeah,
thinking to myself, yeah,
because we expand the definition of a hand to include more fingers.
And to clarify, that the person who made that argument was actually the pro spectrum person, not the pro binary person.
Yeah, no, because that is an argument in favor of the spectrum. We don't say that someone with 6 fingers doesn't have a hand, because that's another expression that doesn't fit within the normal thing that we associate with a hand. So we associate a greater deal of things with a hand than we think immediately. It goes into like Plato's forms, like what to you is a chair. Like there's a range of things that are a chair, and some people would say that like
yeah,
a couch
I get
is
the
kind
point.
of a
And if
chair
I may
and stuff
interject, to
Yeah,
just
go for it.
clarify, like I've never said that a person of an intersex, if they are born male and with a female organ, or born female and with a male organ, or something else like that, that they're not born with a gender, or excuse me, not trying to say that they're born without a gender. Just to clarify my position on that.
Yeah, but that's where I think that there's a big conflict in your principles on this, is because then what is it that is making them female or male in those scenarios?
I guess what is making them male or female is what the doctors measure, because this is like one other side of the gender spectrum debate that really gets me, is when somebody says that the doctors are literally assigning a gender. No, I like to think of it that they're more like measuring what their gender is, and the measurement that they use is the very basic bits of things to measure gender, that being, genitalia. They're seeing what genitalia is born between the baby's legs, and and whatever happens on down the road with them and their gender, well, they're not, or unless that doctor is like the lifelong family doctor for even that person who was born right there, then it's not really that doctor's concern, unless they're again like the lifelong doctor for that person.
Yeah, but typically when a doctor does that, they don't take like the chromosomal checks of it, which you agree. They do it based on genitalia things. So if the genitals,
go on.
You don't what?
I was about to say I don't. I was about to say I don't know if doctors do a chromosomal check. I mean, I kind of doubt. Yeah, that's that's why I had a feeling. that I had a feeling of that. But your point.
So my point is like that they are doing it based on like an expression of, and they're choosing to do it on the expression of the genitals. And I would say that when a child is born, that is typically going to be very useful in that, like, if they have medical conditions and like that, like, then you go into the hospital and your medical records read your gender, and most of the time it's going to match to your chromosomal makeup, and the expected like health effects are going to be in the range of the female gender and the male gender. Okay.
Right.
But like socially, someone could still have appeared with female genitals and have the identification of a man on and choose to dress tomboyish and stuff. And socially, there's a lot of people that would refer to him as he, or, oh, nice little boy. And we even see that in like older American culture, where children were just referred to as like little boys or little girls at a certain age, like when they were particularly young. And that there is a separate utility that occurs with the he, she, they, guys, dudes, gals, woman, man, than there is with male and female. And I agree 100% that there has to be a recognition of the biological fact of bodies in terms of a medical practice, because you want to know hormone levels, organ arrangement and stuff, but you're really still aiming at like what typically occurs. But I agree that there is a utility in that when you're doing medical service. But in like a social context, it becomes a lot more blurry, and we see it even well before the like trans component comes up.
All right, I think we ought to wrap up on this subject a little bit more. So I guess in closing, you would suggest that I should come up with something that's I don't know, a little bit more consistent as far as measurements of gender goes.
I would say that if you wanted to take the hardline stance that gender is intrinsically linked to sex, you have to show ways in which that is consistent, like that definitionally is consistent. And then that you're making a really strong argument for it there. When you don't have ways that are intrinsic to it, it becomes a much harder argument for you to make and defend, because you then have to back off of those points in all of the scenarios where it isn't consistent, because like it's a flaw in your principles. Not that I think that there's anything like, I don't think that you're
my
coming
principles
from a
are not
place or anything.
My principles are not intricately linked as far as, or my core principles are not intricately linked with in regards of gender. And yeah, a whole lot of people in my chat are itching for us to get off of this subject. And hello, Red Feather there in the chat. But yeah, so ultimately, I gotta say, if a person is a libertarian, like if somebody is a non-binary gendered libertarian of some sorts, well, hey, they're gonna still have my utmost respect just in regards to their beliefs, regardless of how funny I might think that their gender identity is or whatever. But yeah, my principle is more along the lines of live and let live, and do not infringe on people's natural rights. And when it comes to gender, again, I would like to rewind back to, as long as there's no laws being proposed over this whole issue, particularly in the private sector, no laws proposed as it mandate that you have to abide by this pronoun or that pronoun, well then, okay, overall, in the ultimatum of things, I don't really have much of a problem.
Can I make a quick question in regards to that? If someone
Sure.
were to continuously refer to you as the wrong name, would you have an issue with that?
I don't find, yeah, perhaps, but I don't find names to be equivalent to gender specifically, because gender is a little bit more broad in the sense of identifying somebody, whereas a name is more specific and minute in the identification of a person.
That's why I said continuously. So if someone came up to you and was like, "Oh, hello, the dark liberal," and you're like, "No, I'm the dark conservatarian,"
I would
and
be all like, who the fuck are you referring to?
and then from then on they called you the dark conservatarian, you would say, "Oh, well, that person just like made a mistake or whatever." But if they continuously were like, "No, you're the dark liberal," you would say that they are being aggressive, correct?
I would say that they are totally getting my beliefs wrong, but yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that we should move on to the abortion subject? Because I noticed that some of the people on your side of the chat are kind of itching to get onto that.
Are they?
Well, I noticed that there was at least one or two.
Yeah. I mean, we can get to. One of them said gender abolition, which I agree with, but that's not abortion. But we could talk about abortion, sure.
All right. So, you say that you have like watched a whole lot of my content in regards of abortion, right?
Well, that's what I watched the most of, because it seemed to be like, at least in the recent videos, like the primary thing. The only other thing I had seen of you is your debate with Jeremiah.
Yeah, that wasn't in regards of abortion at the least.
Yeah, I know that
wasn't,
but yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really care much for the guy, nor does he care that much for me. Lord of Patriarch.
We're on the same page there.
Okay, well, anyway, but putting him aside because he's irrelevant to this discussion. But Lord of Patriarchy.
Yeah, I was just.
What? Okay,
I was just saying things that I'd seen of yours, yeah.
But the more recent content that I have had about abortion was my debate against Lord of Patriarchy, formerly known as Warcorp 666, which everybody might know him by more specifically. But aside from that, I haven't done hardly any edited response videos again on abortion. I probably should sometime soon, considering the fact that I consider it to be a staple topic of mine. Because for almost all my life, I have been against abortion, and my thesis is that I fully believe, and as all people do, that innocent people should not have their right to life infringed upon, that they should not be killed by an aggressing individual. But the one thing that there's a bit of a snag in that principle is that some people do not extend that to, in regards of abortion, in regards of people who are born, you know. So my proposal is to make that more consistent and ultimately just stop the killing of unborn innocent people, that being the fetuses, unborn babies, whatever you want to call them. Is that there's a general ban on abortion, at least here in the United States. I mean, I don't look to make a one world government out of the entire earth and ban it everywhere. I mean, I would ideally like it for it to be banned everywhere, but I just find it to be a bad precedent of a one world government.
Can I ask you a quick question in regards to that? Are you in favor of contraception or no?
Any contraception that does not damage a fetus after the 7 week period, legally speaking, I would say whatever, allow it. I mean, preferably, I don't want contraception to be taken that ends up damaging a conceived, well, zygote, technically speaking, between the 1 to 7 week period. But legally speaking, I cannot make the argument fully as to how that a 1 to 7 week unborn is basically a person. But my measurement on personhood is, and I find it to be a fair enough measurement as well, is the detection of brain waves, and that is started at the 7 week period, and that's basically where I want the cap on abortion to be put at. I mean, if some other pro-life generation in the future takes it all the way down to 0 weeks, well then, hey, good on you. But if you can make that argument, well then, good on you. But
Yeah.
as it stands right now, I personally cannot make that argument, and I still find myself to be at least taking us closer to the goal that the future pro-life generations might want by saying that the national cap should be at 7 weeks. Although at the same time, the whole states' rights argument gets pulled up in regards to the constitutionality of that. So I guess it wouldn't be national; it would be more state by state, and hopefully all 50 states would, if Roe v. Wade was ever overturned, all 50 states would take up their own statewide ban on abortion past the 7 week period. That's my belief on it. And how would we enforce it? We wouldn't be able to enforce it on the individual mother. I mean, especially if they were to do some self-induced abortion, miscarriage by, taking a coat hanger or some other measure, falling down the stairs.
In regards to unsafe abortions, because I wanna focus in on this for a second and then come back to the contraception thing.
Right.
That abortions still occur if that there's no legal access to it, and then they're more dangerous. It seems like, to me, the best way would be to allow ready access to contraception and have legal abortions, from a moral standpoint, that at the point when a being is conscious, taking its life is a moral harm, but from a legal and a pragmatic perspective, limiting the amount of unsafe abortions where more harm is occurring through the use of contraception and legal abortion to a certain point. It seems like there's going to be a decreased likelihood of people later in the pregnancy committing an unsafe abortion.
Well, if I may say on that, for deaths from particularly self-induced abortion, I could not find anything in my research on abortion stats, deaths from unsafe abortions and whatnot.
Yeah, what about deaths
from
of the children?
From a doctor onto a mother, I haven't found anything in regards to that. But self-induced abortions, a mother takes, I say mother because the child is still existing. It's just inside of them instead of outside of them. But a mother taking a coat hanger on themselves, for example, or some other method of self-induced abortion, I do not find women to have generally the guts to do that. And the reason why I say that is because statistically it has been almost non-existent both before and during Roe v. Wade. So I don't see that how, if it was generally banned in America, abortion was, that it would skyrocket. I do not see it skyrocketing.
Do you have a source on that?
Let me go back to my exact video about that, because I made a full-length, 15-minute video talking about the subject sometime of last year. Yeah, it was last year, actually. So, Strike Force editorials, abortion stats and fetal facts. Oh no, wait, no, it's not 15 minutes. What was I thinking? It's 8 minutes. Well, almost 9 minutes. Um. There's actually 3 on about it. You mind if I like just share you the entire video? Actually, that'd probably be the easiest method, the quickest method, anyways.
Y yeah. Okay.
The sources are in the
Well,
description box.
so you're saying that the amount of abortions that occurred increased disproportionately to the population once abortion was made legal?
No, that's not exactly what I'm saying. I do not know how the ratios exactly match up. I just remember researching that deaths from self-induced abortions were around 300 a year. The most
so
I've
deaths,
ever
but
heard was 2,000. Even that is, I guess I am doing a bit of a ratio comparison in that regards because, comparatively to the rest of the, the country,
yeah.
to the population anyways, it's microscopic actually.
Okay, but so my point is that the kids in those unsafe abortions are still dying, and then you also, in addition, have those women dying.
In the case of the 300, yeah. So I guess if we want to go off and end at the same time, but let's say let's
no,
go.
no. What I'm saying is that the unsafe abortions that didn't result in those deaths still resulted in the child dying. So you aren't reducing the amount of children killed in the womb, and you are increasing the number of people that die attempting it.
No, I mean, ultimately, abortions that happen per year is about 800,000 a year nowadays. It was as high as 1 million throughout the 80s and 90s. If we were to generally ban abortion down to
so
a 7-week
abortion's
period,
gone down
wait,
as it's become more available.
Wait, I was not finished with my point there. So if we were to like ban abortion, then I can. Okay, in the legal sense, looking at that stat, the 800,000, it would go down to say 3 or even 200,000, just in the 7-week period. Abortions done within the 7-week period, anyways. I mean, those abortions I would, of course, prefer didn't happen at all. But like I said earlier, I don't know how to make the legal argument against them because, like I said, personhood, brainwaves, fair enough argument. But nonetheless, that's you got like the total abortions nationwide decreased by over 500,000 as compared to this 300 deaths from self-induced abortions, or even 600 if you want to include the fetus themselves or whatever.
But that abortion's more legal now
what?
than it was, but abortion's more available than it was in the 80s. So it's gone down with the increased availability of it and the increased awareness with contraception.
Okay, well, yeah, I realize that there is all the activism done. And let's also like keep in mind, from what I remember researching on the approval rates of abortion, people are noticing it and realizing that abortion is a disgusting thing, and they're realizing that they don't want to do it themselves, which that is good. I'm not that people are taking private sector activism or education in regards, against the practice of abortion, ill-advising doing abortions. But I still don't see as to how that is a justification that we should just still legally allow the killing of an innocent being, that being what's done in abortion.
Well, because it causes less abortions to occur.
Allowing abortion causes less abortions to happen?
Yes, because illegal abortions still occur. Like you're using that 300 number as though that's the only number of illegal abortions that occurred. Those are the only abortions that were found as a result of people dying during the abortion, and then you'd have also the people that were arrested. There would be plenty of abortions.
Do you have?
How would I have stats on
question
a crime that can't be found?
Oh well, okay. Well, okay. This is like what is the exact phrasing that I'm looking for? Not Schrodinger's cat. That's I don't think that's the.
Hold on.
I don't think that's the.
I actually fell right into your trap. But actually, the fact that the abortions have gone down in occurrence with the wider availability of them seems to correlate with that.
Well, what I was trying to say a little bit earlier, I don't think Schrodinger's cat is really the metaphor that I was looking for, but basically you're just going off of a wild guess. Like you're not even like providing any
Oh,
stats
oh,
on the
that
front.
that's fair. But I can provide the stat that when it was more illegal in the 80s and it is less illegal now, and the abortion rate went down with the accounting population increase, it seems like when an abortion is more
Wait,
legal, that it's
wait,
less occur.
it was more illegal in the 80s as compared to now?
Yes, yes, it was less widely available.
Wait, it was
Contraception was
wait, I
also
find that hard to
less widely
believe.
available.
Wait, I find that really hard to believe because within the last 20, 30 years, Republicans within their appropriate states have been trying to put
Within their
on more,
states,
have been,
yeah.
yeah, within their appropriate states have been trying to put on more restrictions on abortion. I mean, whatever motive you like to pin Republicans on that, be it because of safety or because of concern of the fetus and so forth, nonetheless, they have been like trying to put on their restrictions. I mean, I this is the first time that I have ever heard that assertion at all, that it was more illegal in the 80s as compared to now. I mean, I always thought that it was the opposite, quite frankly. That abortion was more legal, was more legally allowed in the 80s as compared to now, in some minute areas, anyways.
Yeah, let me get you a stat on that real quick.
But you're seriously
We could
trying.
actually.
You are you like really trying to imply that there were less regulations on abortion back in the 80s as compared to now?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Wait. Oh, okay. Actually, I think we're getting mixed up in our conversations. I said less. I meant to say more. That's what I meant to ask. Are you trying to imply to me that there were like, oh, are you trying to imply to me that there were more regulations on abortion in the 80s as compared to now? Or less regulations
Yeah.
back in the 80s as compared to now?
Uh, I am implying that there were less regulations now,
Okay. Well,
nationwide.
well, I always thought that it was opposite. I always thought that there were more regulations now than compared to the 80s. That there were less regulations in the 80s compared to now on abortion. That's been slowly, like Republicans been chomping little bit by little bit at the abortion subject, the legality of it.
Um,
Excuse me.
Possibly. I'll
This
actually.
might
I'll
have to be a
actually
subject that
you know,
would have to be
we come back.
yeah,
Come
looked
back
up
on.
at another time. Um, uh, were there more abortion regulations in the 80s than now? Um, okay, bustle.com first the first title that I found, getting an abortion in the 60s was way different than it is let me actually click on it.
Yeah, but that's pre Roe v. Wade in the 60s.
Getting an abortion in the 60s was way different than it is today. Okay.
Yeah, but that's pro. That's pro.
Well, I would also like
Roe
to.
v. Wade.
Okay. Well, when is the exact date? I thought it was like sometime in the mid.
1973. 1973.
It was. It was 1973. My mistake.
Yeah.
I guess I did know. Yeah. Okay. My bad. A bit of a brain fart right there. I'm not seeing anything that explicitly right off the bat goes saying 80s
Yeah,
as
this
compared
is
to now.
well, yeah. This is actually a bit more complicated of a argument that I originally, and so I'll even back off of it, because I will need to look more into it, because there is conflicting information in regards to it.
Yeah, but I would try to gather my train of thought here a little bit. And I'm trying to avoid overloading my computer. I don't want it to hiccup in regards of this or anything like that. So I don't know. I guess I'll save that article for some other time. Save WordPad and close down that USA Today tab. Yep. All right. I don't know. I guess let me try to gather up my thoughts.
Okay, go for it.
If abortion really was less legal in the 80s as compared to now.
I mean, abortion's falling since it was legalized, regardless.
Well, there was a spike,
Right when it
for within
yeah,
the
because that
first
would
10
be
years that abortion
yeah,
was
but that
legalized.
would be a spot. That'd be a spike in relation to people seeking out legal abortions potentially for the first time, and then from there it fell. I mean, it still fell. I
It
mean, we
did
see a
not-
crime spike with the crime. I mean, it's continuously fell.
I don't think it continuously fell until the 2000s. From what I remember of the graphs that I've seen, it remained consistently 1 million throughout definitely the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s.
Well, like per capita.
Well, okay,
Because,
gotta take into
per capita.
contribution per capita, but I guess
Yeah,
I'm getting
Well,
mixed
yeah,
up because
of course you take into consideration capita because
Okay.
the population's increasing.
Another thing considered, I've always looked at it from a raw number point.
Yeah, why?
Barely. Why?
Yeah, why would you look at it from a raw number? The raw number's increasing, like the general raw number is increasing.
I guess for starters, it's because of that's still a massive amount of death that is being willy-nilly allowed to happen, whether or not it is comparative to the rest of the country.
Yeah, but more people die nowadays than did in like the 1400s. That doesn't mean that it's like worse to live now than it was in the 1400s, like you do per capita. Like if you're just looking at the raw number, the raw numbers 10 to 20 years apart are going to be larger for almost everything because there's just more people. Like,
Right.
Significantly more people.
Obviously, I guess. Okay, I never really compared the amount of abortions that happened to the population, to the total population within their appropriate times, to the raw amount of deaths from, illegal or self-induced abortions, more than anything. Because the ultimate goal against abortion is to lower it down nonetheless, whether or not it is comparative to the rest of the population. But lower. The only thing that
the amount of children that are killed. Yes, I agree.
Yes.
But
Be more precise.
So we'll have to. I will have to pull in more for this. Because I mean a lot of information on illegal abortions is going to be. It's going to be extrapolated much in the same way that rape is, because it's like a crime that only when it's reported is going to be noticed.
Okay, I just gotta say that in regards to this graph, all age groups, all the graphs that I've looked at, it was looking at total abortions.
Okay.
This one is 15 to 44 years old.
44 years old, yes. The typically fertile years. How many abortions post 44? Do you think that there's going to be a significant number? Yes.
Probably not a whole lot. I mean, I don't doubt that this is like the majority of them, but it's still a consideration as to looking at the numbers.
Do you think that
the total amount of abortions?
The abortions occurring are going to be so significant that this graph is going to level out?
I don't know for
Or
absolute
do you
certain.
think
I
it's
guess
gonna?
I
Yeah.
guess it's
Okay.
more of a nitpick than anything else, and still
Yes, it's a
it's
nitpick.
still
That's like a huge stretch.
and
You know, it's
it'd
a huge
still
stretch.
be like, I don't know what, 50 to 100,000 abortions happening that we still don't want to be happening. Ultimately, we in the pro-life community.
Yes, but even in the 2000s, less were occurring. Correct.
Uh,
Right? Because you said
yes, in
800,000
the
compared to
2000s,
okay, so
if I recall my graphs, the graphs I've looked at correctly, that
so
that they
yeah.
began drones got
So
under a
given
million.
that, considering the way that this graph tracks, do you think that if they add in the 45 and up, that the 2014s is suddenly going to spike?
I don't know for certain, so
Yeah.
that's my answer. I don't know. Ultimately,
Do you understand how it would be very strange for this number to correlate with the raw numbers also dropping and the fertile years of a woman for it to drastically change the shape of this graph when it's a per capita?
I'm trying to go back to the website right now. In regards of what about abortion stats? I guess so while I'm looking at these numbers, I can provide you them as well instead of just the video link of my own video on abortion while I'm at it. It's
Yeah,
loading
I'd
up right now.
appreciate that.
I think there's like a PDF file or something that I...
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so, oh, well, according to Guttmacher and CDC, it was, well, okay, Guttmacher says that abortion was over a million, nonetheless, until 2012. Well, until 2013. 2012, it says that 1,011,000. Then 20 off. Looking at the exact numbers, and according to CDC, it says that it got under 1 million by 1998. So that I always I found it funny
Wait,
that
so
they could
that
not
would
get
be...
the same exact numbers.
Yeah.
1973, it did not, according to Guttmacher, it did not really start to lower until 1990, and even in 1990, it was still at 1.6 million.
Yeah, that's that is raw numbers.
So it wasn't just like the first 5 or 10 years after Roe v. Wade,
no,
seemingly,
because I know that Guttmacher thing is referring to the raw numbers. So obviously it was about in the millions.
Okay. I mean, I guess I'm still not seeing... Well, tell me, why do you think...
fell?
What?
So okay, actually, I know what question you're gonna ask me, and I've actually already given you the answer of mine. Why do you think it fell following 1990?
I think I already gave my answer. Is because the rise of the pro-life community and the rise in education against abortion. Well, about abortion in general, but even education warning people against abortion. But that wasn't the question that I was about to ask. The question that I was going to ask is, why do you think that the pro-life community should weigh in the ratio of abortions happen per capita as opposed to how many abortions happened in raw numbers?
Why do I think you should use per capita over raw numbers? Is that actually that stat about that the pro-life community increased is wrong. It's gone down over since 95.
Since
no,
95, I thought it was like just recent.
Yeah,
it's still
public opinion
as compared
no.
as compared to the 1970s. It had gone up.
Oh yeah, good thing that after 95 it tracks with it going, the abortion's going down. So
I just
it looks like
I don't remember the exact fluctuations. I don't remember the exact fluctuations that happened after 1970 or 1980 even. But I just remember that it's considerably higher now than it was during most of the time of the abortion debate in the 20th century.
Yeah. And in 2019, it's lower than it was in the 90s, meaning that it still tracks with as abortion becomes more acceptable, less abortions are occurring.
Wait, this is. I don't think. There's like another one. I think it was Gallup, the one that I was looking at.
I mean, this is a Pew.
I know this is. I know this is Pew, but I think Gallup was the one that I had looked at a while back, in regards of approval on abortion. I wish I had God, I wish I remembered actual word for word on these whole things. And I just remember like abortion.
But the reason that you use capita over raw numbers is the raw numbers of population are increasing. You use capita in almost every because it shows you a statistical breakdown of a population.
Okay, fair enough. So, in regards of taking into contribution the entire population, it's not. I don't know. I don't know if this is the right way of wording it or not, but it does not. It's not as immoral comparing the number of people that live in the United States, but still a big time moral atrocity that happens just in general.
Around the world.
I mean,
why I don't care what they're doing around the world, dude. We live in America.
no, I was talking about America. I was talking about America. I wasn't talking about the world.
Okay. I thought when you said a moral atrocity that occurs looking outside of America, you meant around the world.
No. Did I say outside of America? I meant to say the population of America. I don't know if I said outside of America.
Okay.
A higher population within the United States. That's what I meant to refer to. I guess in regards of a higher population that grew throughout the years within the United States, taking into contribution the population, compared to the population, it became a less of a moral thing, or an immoral thing.
Right.
I don't know.
Yes.
The best way that I that's the best way that I can word it for right now. Anyways,
it occurs less in relationship with the population, meaning less people are going to get it. And then even though the population has increased and people, at least in this pew, are more accepting of it being acceptable in different circumstances, it still occurs less. There are a lot of factors that go into it, and I agree with you that we should decrease the amount of abortions that occur, and I think that primarily we should do that through like sex education and contraception, and then we have less abortions and there's less kids that
okay. Gallup here is showing a little bit of a different story as far as the fluctuation of abortion goes. Like I remember. Can
you send me the Gallup poll?
Yeah, I'm sending it to you right now. I don't know why there's the preview. But yeah, it says that the pro-life community overtook the pro-choice community, or at least between the self-proclaimed pro-lifers and pro-choicers, anyways.
So
because people do have
people
do have slightly different definitions of pro-life and pro-choice, but self-acclaimed pro-lifers overtook self-acclaimed pro-choicers at least briefly in the late 2010s, and then it was still like roughly equal throughout most of the two.
But that demonstrates basically the same thing.
Whereas Pew is showing it that pro-choicers always overtook pro-lifers, just flat out. Gallup is a little bit more static.
Sort of, because that is showing pro-choice versus pro-life, and then this is showing legality of. You can still say like whether or not it's legal or illegal. Like I'm sure there are things that are legal versus illegal that like you have a moral issue with, but still would justify like legally correct. Like you would say that that the legal basis of this is necessary.
No. I mean, I still want to rewind the conversation just a little bit and say that keep in mind that earlier I did admit that.
Wait.
Wait. No. I want to finish this point.
Wait.
I want to let me finish this point.
The Gallup poll literally actually still shows the same thing. Scroll down to Americans' preference for the legality of abortion.
Pro-life versus pro-choice and morally wrong, morally acceptable. Oh well, the second graph says
no. Scroll down a little bit.
Wait. I want to present the full. I want to present the full context. The second graph says morally wrong overtakes morally acceptable and legal only under certain circumstances, which I want to add.
Yes, which is the exact same thing that the Pew thing says. And what I just made the point. Yes, it does. Legal in all the most cases. Illegal in all the most cases.
Illegal in all circumstances. Legal under any
Actually, and this,
Here, I just want to also add that of what do they mean by legal only under certain circumstances? Like, I remember the Gallup poll. I've seen it before.
Yeah, it's the one that
trust me. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now. I do not know what your deal is. I'm looking at it right now, and I remember looking at it. And I always found that third category, legal only under certain circumstances, to be kind of a jaded topic or jaded category.
Good thing legally under
any
any circumstances is still greater than illegal in all circumstances.
The reason why I was about to say that it's a jaded category, if I may finish what I was trying to say, the reason why I say that it's a jaded category is because you could almost define me as somebody who says that it should be legal only under certain and yet I still call myself a pro-lifer at the same time.
Yes, which was the entire point that I just made.
Not really.
Yes, when I said that the pro-life, and you even made it too, that the pro-life and pro-choice people don't necessarily say the legality of it. That they can identify as pro-life and still say that it could be legal under certain circumstances. You just described yourself as that, because you just described yourself as pro-life.
Just because
that it could be legal under certain circumstances.
I also said that I want it generally banned. Generally means that there are some few exceptions. Not that there is absolutely none. I mean, the people who want to ban it entirely, even in life of mother circumstances, those are a fringe minority, if I might add. The vast majority of the pro-life community does not make up that fringe minority that wants it banned under absolutely all circumstances.
This chart doesn't say that it's a fringe minority.
Illegal in all circumstances, 20%. Okay, so 20%. So 20%. 20%. Yeah, that's what I just said. Okay, so it's not as fringe as I thought as I was thinking.
No,
20% is a little bit 20. Okay,
20% is the fringe. They're the fringe.
I think we're getting mixed up here because we're constantly talking over each other right now.
Let me settle down. I'm sorry.
We're getting a little bit mixed up here because we're constantly. So the fringe minority of people who want to ban it even under the life of mother circumstances. That's why I'm thinking of fringe minority when it comes to abortion. The general majority of pro-lifers believe in the exception when it comes to life of mother, and there's even those weirdos that say that it should be allowed in rape and incest cases as well. I mean, what if that 50% that say legal only under certain circumstances are those types of pro-lifers? I mean, let's keep in mind that if they had their way, that would still be a big step towards my belief on abortion, my ideal world on abortion, more specifically, because if rape and incest is allowed along with life of mother, I don't like it perfectly. I don't like it ideally, but it's still a big step to where I want it, because at least you got the vast majority of abortions illegal, that being in the name of convenience, because that's what convenience.
You're not in favor of abortion in the case of incest or rape.
Ideally, yes. I'm against it. Why?
They assaulted twice the autonomy of an individual.
Well, I want to, if I may finish up what we were like on right here within regards of the stats, looking at the polls and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
But before we
Yeah.
get
So
onto the morality in regards of
okay,
rape
okay,
and
okay.
incest.
So if I granted you,
So if I may like finish my point of why I think it's a jaded category, this
yeah,
legal
you,
only under
you,
certain circumstances.
yeah, you went over that. You did.
Okay.
You do
Yeah,
because
some of those people could be some of those people could be self-proclaimed pro-lifers who believe in those in more exceptions, and some of those people could be pro-choicers who believe in less exceptions for their side. If I'm making any sense. So
yes, it could be. It could be. It could be. It definitely could be. The fact that legal under any circumstances tracks high, I could make the same sort of jump and say,
it's also
oh wait,
let's also
we actually even go further, because so legal under any circumstances, if we scroll down one more, 14%, so that puts that at
certain
30,
circumstances
43,
no,
and then we have legal in only a few circumstances, and then we have unspecified.
right.
So
okay, I remember
yeah.
I definitely remember those first three graphs, but I don't know if I remembered so freshly the fourth graph right there. And by the way, to all those who are like watching right now on my end, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to link these in the description box on my end, but nonetheless. Okay, what was I gonna say? Jeez. Oh yeah, I remember roughly what I was gonna say. The three charts, if we were to like factor in all three charts with each other and put a very strict definition of between pro-life versus pro-choice, they don't exactly fully line up with each other. They're very jaded, and that fourth chart on this article seems to make it even more jaded as to who defines themselves on how pro-life or how pro-choice they are.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, we then have to break down who these legal in only a few circumstances and figure out which few circumstances they would
legal in only a few
find
circumstances.
acceptable.
I mean,
yes,
for all
because so that would be yes. So for all we know, I agree. They could mean exactly like you, or they couldn't. So I agree. They should do more research in regards to that.
All right, fair enough. But the point that I was trying to, I mean, are we done looking at the polls, or was there some more that you wanted to say about the polls? I still find there to be like a general. I mean, even if on the legal side, people are not becoming noticeably or anything more than marginally pro-life, that at least on the philosophical side, or the more moral side, I guess, people are becoming more pro-life and choosing for themselves. No, I don't want an abortion. I mean, either one is good.
Yeah. Yes,
either one is. Both of them is good.
Or pragmatically, it's playing out that they don't need an abortion because people either could be having less sex nowadays, which trends with the lower birth rate nowadays, that we're not like quite at replacement rate anymore, or it could just be that access to contraception, or it could be moral. All of those things could be factors, but I agree with you, like that the less abortions are occurring is good for sure, whatever the circumstances that went into it were.
Lord of Cancer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
So I guess if we're done on the polls, like we said a little bit earlier, the point that I was trying to make a bit earlier before we kind of got in that derailing shout fest a bit there was...
Yeah, sorry about that.
Notice that if we remember back towards the beginning of this segment, I admitted that there has been a drop in abortions, both in the ratio and the raw numbers. I was speaking more on the raw numbers, of course, but nonetheless, there had been a drop in abortions at least throughout the 90s and 2000s. definitely 2000s
Yeah,
to
into the
2010s,
2000s.
and even somewhat in the 90s.
Now
But
a little
even
bit, yeah.
but even in spite of that drop, I still say that it should be made illegal. So, and the stats and all the polls, they're interesting to look at. I will agree, but at the same time, I believe that abortion should be made illegal in the case of definitely convenience, but even rape and incest, in spite of how the stats, the ratios line up.
Before we get into that, can I ask you a quick hypothetical? Say we cut off abortion right now and we had like perfect omniscience and saw that more abortions occurred for what we cut abortion, Planned Parenthood went away and contraception was less available. And when we saw a spike in illegal abortions, would you then be in favor of re-legalizing abortion?
I cannot say that I am. No, I mean,
So if
we
more
we still.
abortions were occurring than currently are, and then we cut it off and made it illegal, and then you had perfect knowledge that more abortions were occurring after that fact, both in raw numbers and per capita, you wouldn't be in favor of re-legalizing it.
My moral conscience cannot agree to that. No.
Okay, I mean that's
But in the
but
in the ultimate of things, I want to say that is a little bit of a wild rhetorical situation. Well, maybe not too wild. So excuse me on
well,
that
yeah,
part.
no,
Excuse me for saying that.
It literally is just to check. Like, I know that it's an extreme hypothetical, but it is just to check
Yeah.
where the morality, and like you kind of have to make extreme hypotheticals.
And
Like, I'm not gonna pin your whole argument and like my attack on it against how you answered. It's easier for me to see like what perspective you're bringing into it when you answer a hypothetical like that. You understand?
Right.
Like it's not meant to paint you in a corner, really.
Right. The thing that I was want to think, or dang it, I kind of lost my train of thought right there. What was I about to what was I saying, Gabe?
The thing that you wanted to bring up was, and you were talking about as like a moral acting individual. Does that
Wait,
help?
okay, no. It wasn't about morality. It's about rhetoricals
okay.
and projections on data. I mean, even in spite,
Sorry.
whether or not of how wild that rhetorical situation is, I still cannot imagine that actually being the case, because I haven't seen the stats to kind of suggest that there would be some skyrocket that would happen
Okay.
within America
Yeah,
if it was
that's
made
fair.
illegal. That was what I was meant to say earlier.
Yeah, and I should have prepared for the legal side a little bit more because I didn't expect. I thought we were going to talk more about the morality of it, so it is a failure on my part, and I could be wrong about that. Like, I'll admit that. I just know that is the commonly cited thing on both sides, is that illegal abortions did occur at some rate.
Yeah. I just don't find illegal abortions to have been enough before Roe v. Wade to make a solid projection that they would skyrocket if we were to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, and the data could potentially show that, and I will accept that.
That is like totally and purely my opinion, of course, but all the same, I think it's a fair opinion looking at the stats of illegal abortions. If a funny thing, Guttmacher did not have a number for like total overall illegal abortions, because obviously there would have been illegal abortions before Roe v. Wade that took place even without the mother self-inducing it themselves.
Well, yeah, and then there would be illegal
was
abortions that were never reported, and like on a very large number, because obviously people aren't going to be reporting that they're doing crimes that they could potentially, in serious trouble for.
Right. Maybe you can make a point that there's not enough people like tracking down on those. Well, okay, I don't know, tracking down on those crimes on abortion or whatever. But like I said, I don't think that really there should be. I don't see how there could like feasibly or practically be done anything on the front of the individual mother, because the pro-life community generally finds that, what was I gonna say? Generally find the mothers to be almost as much of victims as the unborn babies, because more than perpetrators, because they were like peer pressured by their family members and so on and so forth, you know, peer pressured by
What,
family members, or they
pre Roe v. Wade?
well, no, I'm talking about in general. They were peer pressured into, a lot of them are peer pressured into getting an abortion even after Roe v. Wade was enacted. I find
Okay.
me
do we
and the
know? Do we know stats into people that were peer pressured into keeping the child?
I don't think that thing exists. No,
Okay.
I don't think a stat or a study on that specifically happens. All we just know is that there's a whole bunch of anecdotes mostly. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It might be 50-50 for the stories that I personally have heard, or it might even be 75-25 for how many
Yeah.
women actually wanted the abortion themselves versus how many of them were peer pressured by family members. I don't
Yeah.
know
Well,
exactly.
I agree that family members shouldn't pressure, or like even society at large should pressure them one way or the other, because that's a further infringement on like a woman's decision making. Like they I agree that that's I wouldn't say that's like illegal or anything, but like it's morally and socially
Yeah,
reprehensible if
obviously, I don't
your
think I
peer
don't
group is pressuring you one way or the other. Like if they're
obviously
pressuring you to go out and have kids, like what the
obviously I
fuck,
don't
fuck
think
you.
peer pressure should be made illegal. Oh, 1 second. Excuse me. Obviously, I don't think that peer pressure should be made illegal, because that would require for people for there to be restrictions on freedom of speech, literally.
Y- Yeah, yeah, but
But all
I
the
just
same,
had that to clarify.
all the same, it is a factor to take into consideration to present as to how these mothers are being peer pressured into their decision. So in a
Yeah,
way, I find them to, and if they were raped, even more so were they victims in a way. Which I guess that's how we'll segue into talking about the abortion exceptions.
yeah,
Simply said, with incest, I mean, unless we're going to say that it is fine and dandy for us to kill literal inbreds outside of the womb, I don't see the justification to kill them inside of the womb. And rape,
well,
that is very morally messy. When it comes to any case of abortion, that's the most morally messy of them all, because there is a whole lot of empathy to be given to the mother, obviously, because they went through this atrocious well, they suffered under this atrocious act, that being rape. But at the same time, I don't find it a justification to be putting a punishment on the fetus, that being death, or be allowing the mother to take that punishment out on their kid in a sort of way,
mhm.
just because they were raped, because they're not responsible for the rape, the fetus. I mean, my bad. That's my opinion on it. The fetus is not responsible,
Okay,
so don't kill them.
we'll get back to the rape one. I think the incest, the point that you were laying out, um, it is a more clean, straightforward, addressable one. So, um, I would agree that like forcing an abortion on a child that like was a byproduct of incest is morally wrong. But if a pair of
Oh no,
people in an incest, what?
I was about to say, oh no, I'm not talking about forcing a woman to get an abortion if they like fuck their cousin or whatever. No, I'm talking
Yeah.
about allowing people to kill inbreds. I did not mean to imply that unless we're going to say that the state should go out of its way to kill inbreds. I'm saying, if unless we're going to say that it is just fine and dandy for the regular average citizen to kill an inbred outside of the womb, then by that extent, I do not see why it should be okay for them to kill him inside the womb.
for the
Hello?
same reason, that we accept. I know that you have moral complications post brainwaves occurring, but within the concept of pre brainwaves occurring, like for the same reasons that we find it at least within the range of a moral acceptability, in that it's an unconscious being and therefore has never had a perceived conscious experience. And at that point, it isn't worthy of moral consideration. Post that point, it like becomes worthy of moral consideration. So like incest in that regard.
Fair enough.
Um,
Your framing's
yeah,
your framing is a fair framing. The
yeah.
next question is, when do we define that consciousness?
So so you so I would define that consciousness from a moral standpoint, and I guess a legal standpoint, of that a brainwave occurs. Um, Now, you could counter with like people in vegetative states, like, can we just unplug them? But I
Mm,
would say that, like, in a situation where the family no longer wants them on life support, we already kind of do have that within an acceptable range of
right.
things. And that typically, like, we think it is morally reprehensible to assault or attack someone, whether or not they can resist. So like then you don't run the risk of doctors just going in there and pulling the plugs
Well,
out
one
because they I mean, I guess you theoretically could envision a world where that occurred, but
if I
we
if I
most people.
may interject though, resistance doesn't necessarily mean unconsciousness. I mean,
Yes, I know, but we'd still have a problem with someone attacking someone that was unconscious.
right.
That was my point, because that correlates stronger to someone in a vegetative state and a child pre-brainwave activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it's because of looking at examples like that of where the person is brain dead, so therefore the moral and legal responsibility of whether or not to keep them on life support falls on the next of kin. That being like a closest sibling, mother, father, or spouse, whatnot. We say that
Yeah.
it's okay for them to determine to whether or not to pull the plug, and because of the lack of brain activity, we say that it's okay. And by the same moral
Yes.
extension, because there is absolutely no brain activity pre 7 weeks within a pregnancy, that's why that I say legally I cannot make the argument against saying it's okay for a woman to terminate that early of a
Yeah,
pregnancy.
yeah, yeah. And I was just reaching across the aisle and agreeing with you on that aspect. Um, where I potentially, and we're not really going to go back into this. We're just going to agree hardline on this point, that we've already kind of agreed on, is that in a situation pragmatically where having it available later prevents more abortions for one reason or another, then I would be open to it. But morally, I agree with you that, like, pre brainwave, like the moral consideration really falls onto the next available or to the caregiver. Because if someone in a vegetative state has no next of kin, then it does kind of fall onto the hospital who's providing that care. Um, so I think we do agree pretty heavily on the moral side of this, which is what I told you
The
on the
moral side
Discord.
of lack of
The
brain
the
activity.
the rape one, I do think I have a stronger contention with you, because so in a situation where you were knocked unconscious, and you were providing a blood transfusion for them, that other person didn't will that to happen. Someone else did it to ensure the life of that blood transfusion. Or is it morally okay for you to unhook yourself from the machine before the blood transfusion is complete? You won't die if you complete it.
My
You'll
my
just.
my thought is ultimately it should be all right to unplug. Um, and
Okay.
my explanation for that, better explanations against the violinist argument, which that is essentially what you are providing right there. And
Yes.
the biggest thing is because it's not quite equivalent, because birth and pregnancy is more natural than that wild rhetorical situation. Or I don't know, maybe there was
Yes.
a singular anecdote in history of where that happened. I'm not exactly certain.
Yes, but the correlation between the two is that someone else's actions that were forced upon you are causing you to go through a biological someone and then say that you should bleed out because that's natural that you bleed.
I'm sorry, it sounded like you was about to say more after that. What was you about to say? Did I lose you?
Not that where did you lose me at? Because I don't know exactly where you lost me.
It's not just because it's natural for someone to bleed, something along those
Oh
lines.
yeah, so if someone were to shoot someone and they start bleeding, we wouldn't let them bleed out because
Ah,
it's natural for them to bleed.
mm-hmm. Well, obviously, I mean,
Yes.
well, okay.
So
On the on
so
the ethical standpoint, I don't think anybody should be mandated to go out of their way and help somebody who was shot by another person. Morally, we would prefer if they were to be a good
yes.
Samaritan and help that person out.
So under the legal circumstances of that abortion is available, if someone were forcibly raped and impregnated and they went forward and got an abortion, ethically, if the person agreed, then they're just preventing a natural process that occurred as the result of someone assaulting the other person's autonomy.
A natural process that I would argue is where the mother is, well, for lack of better wording, was more of a responsibility on them as opposed to a random good Samaritan. Because the mother is more directly involved with a pregnancy as opposed to the good Samaritan situation.
In that they can get pregnant from being raped.
In that they, and not that they could, in that they did get
Yes.
pregnant.
So why isn't the person that got shot morally responsible for the fact that they bleed when they get shot?
Well, the person. Repeat that question again.
Okay, we'll roll it back to the first part of
No,
so
no, no.
if
Just
okay. So you wouldn't say that the person that was shot and bleeding was responsible for the fact that they were bleeding.
no. Of course not.
Ye-
I mean, I don't say that the mother is responsible for the
Responsible for
rapist
her
who
being
raped them.
pregnant.
I don't.
Okay, but why is she responsible for being pregnant?
Ultimate. Well, okay.
Do you see what
She's
I'm saying?
not responsible for the immoral act of getting raped. I mean,
Okay.
what I would more compare to the act of getting shot is the act of getting raped. Those are more equivalent. The act of getting pregnant, that's not really an immoral thing in of itself. I mean, the what caused that pregnancy, the rape itself, is
Yeah.
the immoral atrocity, not the pregnancy itself.
Yes. Like bleeding from your arm isn't an immoral thing, but it was caused by an immoral act. Like it's a natural process that occurs that was forced upon this woman in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like she could have even been on contraception and taken Plan B and still gotten pregnant
Right.
after being raped.
I know that's
Like
still a possibility.
so, in that situation, where is her moral to carry the byproduct of a assault on her individuality to fruition?
I would say that it's because it's more of a moral or a more natural manifestation of life. Because let's keep him. Okay. I don't know exactly how to word it. Like I said, lots of other people have made a whole lot better arguments against the violinist than me. I've heard those arguments, but I haven't ever remembered exact word for word those arguments. But
Okay. You go
stance
ahead.
my stance is still ultimately that a person who is like a forcefully plugged into another individual okay, that a person who
Well,
is
no,
forcefully plugged
we
into
don't.
what? Go on.
We don't actually have to. We don't actually have to go into the violinist part. Just we can actually wrap it up right here for this one. Um, just go over why you think that the woman is responsible for carrying the child that's a byproduct of rape, and that will cover, really, at the end of the day, the differentiation.
Well, I would like to. Okay, so I would boil it down not to necessarily that she's responsible for carrying the byproduct of rape, but I just find that she is not. She does not have moral jurisdiction or anything like that to kill the person who is an inadvertent byproduct of rape by getting an abortion. That's how I would frame it more specifically. Um, and why would I say that? And why would I say that it's not all right? Or excuse me. And why would I say ultimately that's not all right that she just terminates that byproduct of rape? Because, like I kind of said earlier at the beginning of this segment, natural right to life that we give out to every innocent human being. I mean, there's obviously a more philosophical boil down and breakdown against killing innocent human beings, but that's just the very basic bitch way of me putting it for the thing that humanity asserts for itself. That you just don't kill your own fellow man just because of random arbitrary reasons.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So you would make the naturalistic argument for the morals behind this.
But behind pregnancy as compared to the violinist, yeah, I guess in a way, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, do you want to do immigration or do you want to do systemic racism?
I don't know. I guess we can go on about systemic racism.
Okay. You want to lay out your position on it, or you want me to go first?
One sec. Sorry, I'm just looking at chats here.
Okay.
I guess I shouldn't let myself get too distracted. Do we want to address each other's chats actually before we go any further? Maybe we should maybe we should actually end it off with that instead of going on another subject, because the abortion part of this debate really ate up a good portion of the live stream.
Yeah.
And I don't typically like going on too much longer than 2 hours.
Okay, that's totally fine. Yeah, if your chat's got anything they want to say, in my chat, do you have anything you want to add or ask of the Dark Conservatarian, the Dark Con?
Well, there was one. What about hello Lamb Aaron or hello EM Aaron? I don't know how exactly you pronounce that. What about self-awareness?
Hello, I am.
What? Oh, hello. Oh, no, hello, I am Aaron. Yeah, you're right. My bad, I was reading that wrong. What about self-awareness, which infants don't have until like 1 month, I think? Well, yeah, I don't find self-awareness to be the only thing to be the make or break thing as far as a person's, own personhood goes. I mean, just because a construction worker is not self-aware of somebody is doing construction work above them and they're about to have some piece fall on them by that fellow construction worker of theirs, that doesn't mean that they're that it's just all right to let that piece fall on them. And by the same extent, just because the fetus is not exactly aware of the full world around them outside of their mother's womb, doesn't mean that it's okay that the abortion surgeon takes a scalpel to them.
Yeah, that's not exactly what self-awareness means. Self-awareness would mean recognition of you as a self, like that you could recognize that you are an individual. But I would still say that there are
Okay.
people with mental disabilities that fail to have
Well,
self-awareness, and you wouldn't want them to also fall within the moral purview of people that could be killed. But I get what you're saying, and the point that you're making. You just that didn't fall under self-awareness. Self-awareness specifically refers to like being able to recognize yourself as an individual.
Hello, I am Aaron. Birth and pregnancy brought about by rape is not natural at all. The rape part, of course, is not natural, but the
Well,
manifestation of pregnancy itself is the thing that's natural, as opposed to a blood transfusion by some rando who had nothing to do with the person getting shot. That was what I was trying to
oh,
say was natural. The pregnancy itself.
if you were in vitro fertilized forcibly, would you be okay to abort that child at any point?
I would ask as to why that a person think that has to be done. I would say ultimately no. In vitro.
Yeah, so like they sperm into the egg, like they knocked you unconscious
Like
and they
they're
do
just
that.
artificially being
They
matured into
inseminating
some
you.
kind of stasis chamber. Like we're going into like
No, 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 no,
Star
no, no,
Trek
no, no,
Far
no.
Out.
Not
Sorry.
wait, no, no. In reality, like in vitro fertilization, like exists now.
Oh,
They
okay. You're talking about a surrogacy, right?
yeah, that
Surrogacy
someone
pregnancy.
forcibly surrogacied someone.
Oh, brother.
Would they still have to carry the child?
Well, I would have to say that's a bit of a touche as far as the whole naturalization of it.
So
So,
in that case, would you agree that they didn't have to
I
carry
don't.
the
I
child all the
can.
way?
Okay, I personally cannot bring myself to the conscience of saying that, yeah, it's okay, go ahead, kill them. But
Uh-huh.
I see what the point is there in trying to make an equivalence to the violinist. In that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, because I
unnatural. A surrogacy pregnancy, forced surrogacy is uh, somewhat equivalently unnatural to a violinist version of blood transfusion.
yeah. Yeah, it's more because we've removed the more nat we've removed one of the naturalistic elements from it. Um so okay. I think that that might be a good thing for you to think about because I think that that might have been a way that it has never been presented to you
Well,
before.
I would have to more like I would have to memorize the arguments that other people have made against the violinist.
Well,
Uh, um,
sure. I
because I've
guess
heard the
uh
arguments before. I just never uh, fully remembered it myself. I've made up my own arguments or borrowed arguments that I found more easier to remember. But
yeah.
the violinist, I've
I
just never been able to like fully comprehend. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I guess what I was saying. So what I was saying, because I appreciate I have appreciated this conversation with you a lot. I like being able to take from ground principles, like original principles, and then build up to like your applied ethics is really useful. In debating, I don't know how much you debate. But after having seen the debate with Jeremiah, even though I lean more to the agreement on his point, I thought that the arguments that you were making
Oh.
you could have made a little bit stronger and in a better way, and that you were kind of unfairly treated in that debate. And so that was
Hmm.
one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you and like see. And I think that like
Nonetheless,
um
I don't really want to reflect
okay,
back too
okay,
much
sorry,
on
sorry,
Jeremiah.
sorry,
Um,
sorry, dude.
I mean,
I,
I'm sorry. What? It just seems not exactly wholly relevant towards the topic, especially of addressing the chat and
yeah,
American. Oh god, American Josh side of the stream. on Twitch. Didn't you remember of when I said that we should just completely screw off and leave each other alone and not be, I don't know, going on against each other like 2 years ago? Jeez. I mean, I thought we agreed pretty much that we were just gonna leave each other alone. But nonetheless, I mean that's not what American Josh was saying. That was what I was saying to him. Hello, I am Aaron. How is she responsible for the pregnancy? I guess the word responsible that I kind of applied a little bit earlier is a bit of a misnomer. Earlier in the violinist part of the abortion part of this live stream. She is not responsible for the pregnancy happening or for the pregnancy starting, but she does not get jurisdiction to just up and kill an innocent human being. And I don't know.
Why doesn't she get jurisdiction over her own body?
She gets jurisdiction over her own body in a way that won't kill other innocent human beings. Like if she wanted to get a tattoo or something.
Yeah.
Like that my belief is a person can do whatever they want within, of course, within their natural rights. Whatever, just as long as it doesn't affect second party non-consensually.
So if a person that was intoxicated, if a person that was intoxicated accidentally broke into your house, do you have the right to kill them?
There is still, ultimately, yeah. I mean, there is still some.
Oh.
There is still
So if that kid accidentally wound up in her womb.
There is still some. Okay. Well, I guess not. Well, I don't know. I'm getting fried right now.
It's okay, dude. I want you to know that I really did appreciate having this conversation with you, and I know that we did get heated at that moment, but I did
if I may, like, start over, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Ultimately, if a person is to break into your house, I don't think that you can just kill them willy-nilly. Like, if they pose little to no harm, then no, you cannot just up and kill them. You can ask them to get out, and if they are maliciously going to refuse to leave, well, then at that point, you're allowed to up and kill them.
Yeah, so when you ask the baby to leave and it doesn't, and then you start to get sick,
except
and have cramps as a result.
Except there's no malice on the baby's part. Baby has no form of malice that they can express.
If there was no intent to harm you maliciously, they were just stumbling around and swinging around, would you not have a right to kill them?
Oh, no. If you're talking about abortion, no.
No, I'm talking about the person in your house.
Oh, the person in the house. Repeat it again, then.
So if either they trip into something that falls over and hits you, and that harms you, do you still not have any right to kill them?
It depends on to what extent it is and how much damage. I will say that if it gets extreme enough, then yeah, I do not know about kill, but take some kind of action to stop them from doing further bodily harm to you or your family members that live in that house.
Yeah. Would you be in favor of them cesarean section, early birthing the child, and then it just goes into an adoption? Then.
Sorry, I'm trying to see if there's anything more in your chat that I should address. What were you about to? What was that you asked again?
Never mind on that one.
Okay.
Okay on that one.
And I'm going to remind. Never mind. I don't think that should be. I don't think that should be addressed any further. Aaron Smith, hypotheticals are important for arguments when discussing ethics. This is my side, by the way. When discussing
Okay.
ethics, you need to entertain hypothetical premises that challenge those ethics. Which, fair enough. The question is, how applicable are those hypotheticals exactly?
Yeah, and I would say that you engage with basically every hypothetical. Like, I wouldn't have, I don't have any criticism of. I
Red
think you were very fair with it.
Red Feather on my side does have a question. Ask him this: if you have a
Okay.
cat or dog that keeps going around the neighborhood and getting pregnant, do you just keep getting it abortions? You address
I
that
mean,
how
I
you
get,
want.
I would get it a hysterectomy or a vasectomy. And those women, if those are widely available to them, I want to ask you if you'd be in favor of men and women getting permanent contraception if they chose to.
Permanent contraception. I mean, they can if they
Yeah.
want to. Not for so much paying it with public tax dollars.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Are you? Well, no. I know. I actually no. Never mind. Yeah, yeah. But
Is
I
there
don't see
anything?
that so that hypothetical is actually an example of a bad hypothetical because you would get the permanent his hysterectomy or vasectomy on the animals, and I'm the one paying for it. If the people are paying for it or the state's paying for it, like whatever one results would be what they pay for.
Is there
They can get
anything?
abortions as many times as they want if they pay for them.
Is there anything more specifically from your side that you want me to address?
Um. Oh, someone wants to know: is it murder to come into anything other than a fertile woman?
What? No,
I
not.
mean, this
Oh,
sperm
is it?
cells.
Okay, sperm is
Yep.
life. What about coming? Is it murder to come into anything other than a fertile woman? Sperm is life. I mean, yeah, sperms are literally alive, but I would say that a sperm that has no brain or anything else conceived like that makes us consider somebody to be a total person is no more alive than a freaking blade of grass. So no, I don't agree that a sperm up and dying because let's keep in mind, in order to create life, to create like full blown human life, you end up destroying some life too, and by ways of the thousands upon thousands of sperm that die in the ejaculation into the woman. But we do not go freaking out about every single sperm that die in a natural pregnancy. Um,
Yeah.
a fetus's brain is not fully developed. Well, neither is a 1 month old just born baby, but we don't say that it's okay to kill them, so I don't find it to be justifiable in that regard.
Yeah, I think the reason that he brought that up is because you said that since the sperm isn't a thinking thing, that we don't give it any more moral consideration than a blade of grass, which would include some people that are people.
Well, the reason why we say that we don't give the same consideration to some people is because they committed some act that is
No. Wait, hold on. You misunderstood what I said. He is saying that since you said that the sperm is like a not thinking live, sure it's alive, but it's not thinking, so he wouldn't give it any more consideration than a blade of grass. Goes into that there are some people
Oh,
that
th-
aren't
th-
having brain activity at all.
that might have been a
And
misspeak
that,
on my part because I did not mean to use the literal word thinking because technically speaking, a 1 month just born baby is not really that much thinking either, or even a 1 day old just born baby. Now, there's no brain pattern
yeah,
at all. There's no um, vital sign activity hardly at all for what we consider to be an individual human being. There's none of
yeah,
that with a sperm. Like, there's a good Princeton article, which I guess I'll have to link that to you as well. A Princeton article that goes defining that a human being is somebody that has double the amount of chromosomes from what a sperm or a oocyte, I think they're called oocyte anyways, you know, the egg that the women have, that has double the chromosomes of the sperm or egg, and is also the merging of those two things, sperm and egg. So it's not quite equivalent to a sperm.
Yeah. I have to run to the bathroom real fast. Do you just want to wrap it up, or do you want to wait? Like, 4 minutes? It's up to you.
I don't know. I don't know if we have anything more to go by, unless people want us to address more. No, you go ahead and go to the bathroom. Actually, I'm going to address a little bit more of my chat. We'll
Okay,
take it
yeah,
from
go
there
for it.
once you get back. I actually honestly do have laundry that I have to get to right after this live stream, folks. So I don't know if how much further we'll go on. That abortion part of this live stream took up more space, way more than I originally thought it would. I kind of hoped that we would get onto the whole systemic racism and immigration part. And I guess if I was to like quickly explain my belief on immigration, I become more and more lax on immigration. I believe in a lax, if not borderlining, open borders immigration policy, but at the same time, if we're to do that, there should be no existing welfare system. I'm more of the, I guess you could say, Milton Friedman camp of immigration. Open immigration, but no welfare system in regards to that. If there is a welfare system, then there has to be some check on immigration. That's my basic thoughts on that. And systemic racism, it does not generally exist nowadays, and I'm saying generally. But what is your position on UBI? Asks Aaron Smith. Against it. It's way too expensive. Do you consider that to be welfare? Well, I don't know. There are some people who have argued as to whether or not it should be defined as welfare, but whether or not it's defined, a UBI is defined as welfare, I don't really care. Whether you want to call it welfare or not, I'm still going to be against it because it's too expensive. What about UBI that's not directly funded by the government? Well, if you're talking about coercing businesses to give a UBI to their employees or some other method, I cannot see how UBI can be instituted without some kind of coercion or overly expensive tax plan at the expense of business owners and so forth. Life is amazing when you really think about it, says Red Feather. I can agree enough with that. Particularly innocent life. We have way more tax money than people realize, or at least could if we tax the rich properly, says Smiley P on my side of the chat. And hello, Smiley, by the way. It's understandable. I get where you're going with that. But at the same time, if we raise taxes too much, I can only imagine that more and more rich people would start shipping their money in overseas bank accounts, or even just flat out moving out of the United States themselves, and we would lose that revenue entirely, rather than just gradually and in a small way tax that revenue, or gain that revenue through a smaller taxation, more specifically. But I do want to just add, before I go on any further, that ultimately, as much of qualms I have with welfare and slightly higher taxation, I find that to be not near morally equivalent to the grand amount of death that happens that is abortion. That is allowed to happen, legally speaking, within the United States, called abortion. Why do unborn babies have the right to life, but not poor people who can't afford food or health care? Asks Smiley P. I mean, everybody has the right to life, but You're just having, no offense, Smiley P, you're just having a bit of a misunderstanding as to what right to life means. Right to life doesn't mean that you are provided inherently by other people resources to live, but that you are not just outright killed by other people. And as far as poor people dying because of XYZ, I mean, yeah, we would prefer if those people get helped, but at the same time, I don't believe that they should be mandated, and really, not being provided the resources to live is not the same as being outright killed by that person. Okay, J Will series, hello, by the way, in the chat. Making immigration completely free as long as the immigrants find work and a place to live in first world. I don't know if that's a typo or what, J Will, but anyways, making immigration completely free as long as the immigrants find work and a place to live in first would, okay, lower immigration immensely. Dark conservatarian, it's a very good idea. Okay, I gotcha. I understand. Smiley P says that's what globalization is. Yeah, I don't agree with that definition of globalization. What I think of globalization to be is if you are uniting all nations on Earth into a one world government. I mean, I guess open immigration is more globalizing than a freaking hard line, closed borders, immigration nationalist policy. But all the same, I don't find that to be globalization. Globalization, I find to be the gradual process of getting the whole world to unite under one world government. Where did Gabe go, says Balloted? Gabe went over to the bathroom. By the way, I switched over from my live chat to Gabe's live chat. So quality of life isn't important, interesting. I don't know what you mean by that, Sook AI official. I don't know what you mean exactly by that. All death is natural because all life is natural because all matter is natural because nature is a lie. Do it, keep going, Sook AI official. Do it, keep going. Those last two chat comments, I guess he's wanting us to keep on going with this live stream. But unfortunately, I have other things I have to do within the day, so I don't know if I agree to that. But those first four chat comments, don't know what that's supposed to be in regards to that. I don't know. Definitely taking a dump, says hello, I am Aaron. It almost seems that way because Gabe is taking long enough to be doing that. Okay, so Sook also says, okay, so what is the point of caring about a kid that is being born if you're not ready to handle what comes next, which is someone that didn't want a baby having a baby? Okay, yeah, you're talking about for what if the baby is absolutely unwanted? I mean, I find a person to be unwanted not to be a good measure as to whether or not a person should be outright killed. I mean, think of it this way. Nobody wants... let me get a good example of somebody who nobody likes. Nobody wants the atheist gamer to be around, or DSP gaming, or whoever person that you think is just an absolute loser and low life. Nobody wants those types of people around, but it doesn't mean that, right to kill them or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying that is necessarily what you're for, Sook, but I'm just drawing an equivalence. I'm just drawing an equivalation here to make the point that I don't think that lack of want of a person means that their right to life is completely null and void. But ultimately, if a child is unwanted, I am open to the idea that they should be allowed to put the kid up for adoption. I mean, especially if the woman was raped. Especially if the woman is raped, they'd be allowed to put up the kid for adoption. The life is contingent upon the resource, but state funded and fix adoption. Not so sure what you mean. I mean, bare minimum, they know on some level they shouldn't have a kid. I don't know what you're referring that chat comment on, Sook, when you say but state funded. I mean, state funded is better than outright allowing mass death to happen, generally speaking, but ideally speaking, I'm not for state funded hardly anything.
Well, hello, dude. Sorry.
If a decision can be made by the family with someone who's brain dead on life support, I don't see why a fetus can't be aborted. Except they're not brain dead within when their brain starts developing at 7 weeks and onward. So, not quite equivalent, Aaron.
One question on that I would actually like to revisit and would like to look into, not necessarily us revisit, is actually what constitutes brain dead in an adult. Like, I wonder where the brain activity difference lies, you know,
right,
just for like scientific purposes.
And I guess
because like I said, I still generally agree with you from the moral perspective.
Right, and I guess there is more research that has to be done in that I have to be reading into that, as far as brain development and the definition of brain dead goes, because I do vaguely go hearing that there is some very, very minute brain activity that happens even with somebody who's brain dead, because I've always presumed that brain dead means absolutely none, zilch, like negative 1%. To put it hyperbolically, brain activity.
If it was actually zero, I think at that point, like you no amount of life support would really like support your ability to be alive. Like your body would just start deteriorating.
I guess for right now, the differentiation that I would put between a 7-week fetus and a brain dead person is that the 7-week fetus has a brain that is actively developing, whereas the brain dead person has a brain that is actively dying, and just their whole entire self actively dying.
Yeah, generally that's the
case. Unless they wake up from it.
There's examples in the opposite direction in both cases. Like, there are children who end up like having brain activity and then their brain completely malforms and like they are stillborn and stuff like that. And then, like you said, sometimes people wake up even if it looks like there's no hope.
Right. Very quickly, I want to address this in my chat. Smiley P says, okay, but then we use different definitions of globalization. I was referring to the definition of globalization where businesses move out of the U.S. and into other countries. Well, okay, I guess there is different forms that you can like practice some form of globalization, but ultimately, I generally like to think the term of globalization as a more strict term of uniting the world under one society, or even a one world government.
Yeah,
slowly but steadily. Go on.
I would say that nowadays that definition is probably the less common used one, but I understand. Like, from you saying that, it helps me understand a lot of times when it came up in your videos, because I was like, wait, what does he mean by globalization? But you spelling it out there was actually kind of helpful.
Which video would that be? Because I don't recall.
I think it was just like briefly mentioned, and I was like, well, that's kind of a weird definition. I don't really specifically remember, and it doesn't matter because it wasn't even the focus of it, but you had mentioned it, and I was just thinking of like global trade and things like that, and then like in the context that was used, I was like, I don't think that's what he means, but I'm not sure. And then so you saying that.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I'm a free marketeer,
clarified
and
that.
that I generally believe that people should be making doing international commerce. Um,
Yeah.
so do we want to wrap up this live stream, or do we want to get onto the
It, it's
systemic
it's
racism?
it's a totally up to you. I am fine either way. Um, I stream. I am happy to do it, but I know that you stream shorter. So if you want to
I
close up and wrap up, that's fine too.
try to keep it short, anyways. We'll go on to one more topic, I guess. Let's go into the whole systemic racism thing for a bit, for like a good 10 to 20 minutes or something.
Okay.
Immigration we can save for another time, or how we how relations work between you and me.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not saying that I dislike you right now or anything. I'm just saying
okay.
that
Okay.
in case we like end up falling off the bandwagon is what I mean. We
Oh,
just
okay. 'Cause
naturally start
yeah.
drifting away to where we're all like, who's that guy? Oh yeah, that guy that I talked to on that one live stream one time.
Yeah. Because I was about to say, I like, regardless of
No, yeah, no,
where we disagree on, yeah, I'm like, you're cool.
I did not mean to espouse any malice towards you.
Insinuate, yeah.
I was just
Okay,
mean
yeah,
like
that's
it in case we just drift out of each other's minds just naturally.
circles. Yeah,
But
yeah, I gotcha.
anyway, so my belief on systemic racism, I guess, is right now, anyways, like obviously with Jim Crow laws and definitely with slavery, that I would find to be a solid definition of what systemic racism was. And, well, even that's how I define it right now, anyways, and America in those contexts back then. Right now, I am of the belief that systemic racism is generally not a thing that exists. And any racism that does exist, it's not systemic in the way of government practices. Because I don't know about your definition of systemic racism, but how I would define it personally is if like it was like written in law to discriminate against this person on that arbitrary characteristic, or that other person because of other XYZ arbitrary characteristic, or high government officials are actively working against the person or the group of people because arbitrary characteristic, and nobody is challenging them, or other government officials that do know of it but they're just completely ignoring it because either they agree with that practice, that racist practice, systemic racist practice, or they just don't give a crap, or because those other people that are actually acting on the systemic racism have more weight in the game than the other person than the other government official that doesn't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that was pretty wordy, but you get the gist of what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I talk about systemic racism, what I mean is where the intersection of laws and policies interact with the general population and result in disproportionate outcomes to certain groups, so that those policies and legislations don't seem to work like in a broad sweeping national context, because there's just some geographic areas or socioeconomic regions where they fail, and that due to the overt racism that occurred pre the role, blacks were more concentrated in these areas, that the policies that work really well for suburbs and in some cases certain rural areas don't work and fulfill the needs of inner city areas. And so we see this disproportionately play out into primarily black communities, but poorer white communities as well. We see a lot of that interaction occur. And that
Right.
even if every single person had no racial bias in government and law enforcement and the day-to-day lives, if nothing changed, we would still see worse outcomes because these policies handle the issues unique to those sort of areas. For
Right.
example, like the war on drugs affects all of us negatively, but really heavily negatively impacts inner cities, and it feeds into what some people will say is like the culture of African Americans of like gang violence and things. But they engage in gang violence, at least in some percentage, to create monetary gain by illegally moving drugs through those areas.
Sorry,
Was that too much of a mouthful? Or
sorry, I was taking another peek over at the chat right there. The unequal outcomes, I don't necessarily I would have to like see somebody substantiate it as to how that an unequal outcome, statistically speaking, was because of the system directly enacting upon that group that caused them to have an unequal outcome. Because
uh,
unequal outcomes I don't
go
find
ahead.
to be inherently because of the system that they live in, but because that there is still the possibility that it's each individual within that group that caused the group as a whole to have an unequal outcome in that area. Like this isn't. This
Yeah,
is like a
give me an
shifting.
example. 'Cause
What?
I might be. Can you give me an example of that? Because I might be missing the point that you're making. I don't think that I fully grasped it.
People generally having an income that is lower than other groups. Like, I'm going to just full on admit right here, I have not looked too much into the stat disparities between the races. It's just generally what I go hearing stated as fact by all many different sides of the political spectrums.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, outcomes, or excuse me, not outcomes, in economic income, like household or personal income, or whatever, however you want to look at it, generally being lower within the
Yeah.
black community than other communities. I mean, there's no laws that is preventing a black person from getting a higher income, being like a welder or something else like that. So,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I can only so there are other factors that contribute to a good raising of the children. I know that's a little bit of a right wing stereotype to be talking about the black family, but there is a
Yeah.
grain of truth to it nonetheless. And also
Yeah.
just being
So,
satisfied with lower wage jobs and so forth.
um,
Oh,
do you
go on.
have a source on them being subs, or are they satisfied with lower wage jobs
I
than whites because they typically make less than whites?
I guess that's more of an assertion on my part than anything. So you'll have to forgive me on that.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. I wanted to make sure because that might have been like a crazy thing that would have
Let's
significantly
see.
shifted it. So things like uh
Labor
poor
participation.
raising and poor education and things of that nature play into the likelihood that they're going to make decisions like um choosing to be a welder or getting a union job and things of that nature.
I'm sure this
um
is something that I could easily enough find on fred.stlouisfed.org, a graph that goes talking about labor force participation in manufacturing by race and so forth.
oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. If you find that, that would be useful. But I would say that there's, even in the poor raising,
Oh,
there's intersections there between ways in which legality affects those communities and the culture that develops in response to the legal and environmental situation that they're in. For example, one of the commonly cited things is that lead paint is in higher concentrations in tenement homes within the inner city, and there is a correlation between lead intake and aggression. Um, Putting money and focus into rebuilding tenement homes out of better materials could result in better behavior, which would lead to them choosing better jobs. And that's an example of like an issue that doesn't affect the inner city and is a policy that, without any intent of being racist, has a racially disproportionate impact.
Sorry, I'm still looking at different. Oh, here's one that I have to look more closely into. Analysis. Okay, analysis from USA Today. Blacks largely left out of high-paying jobs. Government data shows. Like, I literally just came across this, but here it is. Share it between the both of us in case that we want to read it in the future. And maybe I'll just tell you in the DMs later on if I'll have to retract or point out as to what exactly I was referring to.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it might likely be a wrong assertion or assumption on my part to be thinking that black people participate in manufacturing or stuff like that less than white people, but I don't know.
Yeah. I may actually have one of these sources. There is have you seen you understand the concept of stickiness at the ends, right? Like
Of
that
what?
the
Sorry.
stickiness at the ends, the economic concept that the uh economic class that you were born into, you are more likely to remain in.
Wait, did
As
you say economic stickiness?
the economic concept, stickiness at the ends? Yes.
I've never heard of that. This is a first time.
Okay, so the
Stickiness
idea
at the
is
ends.
that people who are born of a certain economic class, like any economic class, tend to stay in or exceed that economic class as they get older, like as they grow up and get a job. However, within the African American community, even for wealthier African Americans, we see that they're more likely to fall to a lower economic class than their parents.
Wait a minute. You wait. Within black people, they're likely to fall into lower paying jobs than their parents. Is that essentially what you
Not
just
just
said?
not just lower paying jobs, like entirely lower economic classes. So because if you're like a in a like a higher end economic like level, like if you're upper middle class or something, you likely would receive inheritance and things like that, and those people are more likely to fall to lower economic levels than their parents had as compared to whites.
Well, I would ask as to how exactly that is because by extension of that same logic, I've also generally heard that back like pre repealing of Roe v. or excuse me, not sorry, still thinking about abortion. Pre Jim Crow, pre the repealing of Jim Crow, that black people had a similar and even a lower unemployment rate than white people. And so it's not surprising to me that the grandparents or even great grandparents of black people today were a lot better off than the actual present day black people. So again, my question would be: is it because of other people or what?
So, well, that's what I was asking you. So, but what I would say is that
Well, here's my thing. I'm not convinced that it's because of the system itself that is being all like, oh, you black person have to remain poor or something like that. I mean,
yeah.
And I'm not
So,
even
so
going
you
to.
think that there are,
And I guess I should
sorry.
like just not be outright presenting the assertion that it's because of their own life decisions, but I'm just going to remain in the position of or the default position of neutrality, and that I don't know exactly why it is.
Okay.
But I'm
So,
not going to assume the most malicious thing being that the economy is systemically racist against black people, intentionally trying to keep them down or whatever.
yeah. So one of the things that I would point out post Jim Crow is redlining, and when they were black, blocking African Americans from getting home mortgages, which, when the white flight to the suburban areas occurred, resulted in African Americans being concentrated in the inner city. And then, once again, because the policies in general were better equipped to handle suburban life than inner city, like massive inner city life, um, they disproportionately experienced the effects of those policies not accounting for inner city living very well.
Was your claim that redlining is still happening right now, or it's because of the redlining that happened in the past, therefore they're still being affected right now because of it?
No, I'm saying that so their parents who were doing better than them in Jim Crow, because that would be the, or their grandparents, I guess nowadays,
Okay.
typically, I mean, there would be some parents, would have been isolated into those areas. And then the policies never adapted as the inner city grew, and that those policies that don't account for inner city living at the moment are causing harmful impacts.
Well,
And that's
obviously the thing
prior to getting into the justice system stuff.
obviously the practice happened in the past, and like I said, I agree that America was in some ways systemically racist back then. I'm just not seeing how it
Yes.
is right now exactly. I mean, redlining, some of it has bled out into the present day, but I have a couple
Wait,
named
okay,
Abba
but
and Preach.
I, yes, I
Go
do
on,
know
go
them.
on.
But I'm not saying that redlining is still occurring. I'm saying things like the tenement homes having led values higher than in suburban construction, the poor way in which we approach public school funding for very dense areas, the nutritional availability within inner cities, all of those are occurring. And for people living within inner cities, a lot of times the solution is like, well, they could just move, but we can address these policies and make it so that the inner cities are a productive and value generating area, which benefits all of us. And that's like the part that I am more focused on, is like the uh willingness to not look at those issues and address them, um that sometimes occurs.
Hmm. Well, well, like I was mentioning with Abba and Preach right there. I mean,
Yeah.
they were actually making a response video to Ben Shapiro on the issue of systemic racism, but even them in their
Hmm.
response admitted that excuse me, that the Justice Department was cracking down on some of the redlining that's happening. So the system,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, in some localities throughout America, they're trying to, get withhold redlining and so forth. I do not deny that. I do not deny that there are some smaller communities that are being racist with its citizens and whatnot. But I was just saying, like,
Hmm.
as a generality, nationally speaking, I don't believe that
Yes.
America is systemically racist, and that would be an example of America trying to correct its own the racism that happens systemically within localities. Is that
Yeah.
the Justice Department is trying to crack down on that?
Yes, but so I wouldn't say that America as a whole is systemically racist. I'm just saying that there are
Oh,
systems that disproportionately impact it, and that we should address those. And if you agree with that, then we're on the same page. Like if you think that issues that do disproportionately affect certain populations due to policies not being adopted um, or improved over time need to
Well,
be addressed.
there are some that were improved over time. I mean, Jim Crow that was forcibly making black people
Yeah,
so
but
that they cannot
yeah,
attend to some certain businesses. Those were forcefully repealed in the 60s.
hmm yes, but we're talking about the issues that are facing them right now. And once again, we still haven't
Right.
even gotten to the justice aspect of it, where the disparity becomes much more apparent, and the long-standing effects of it are more severe.
Well, I will say that these examples of redlining within communities, maybe it should be publicized more. And by publicized, I mean like in publications, media publications. But at the same
Yeah,
time, I would still refer back to the Justice Department doing somewhat of a crackdown on that.
yeah, but I'm not saying that they're being redlined. I'm just saying that they are now at the economic position where most of them can't just move away, and that we should still address the problems within the inner city, so that the inner city is a more productive and wealth generating area for the betterment of everyone.
Mm,
Because when you have people that are able to generate more wealth and buy more for everyone involved nationwide.
well, I do not know if how much I would agree with that, but I do believe in
They,
federalism. In what you're talking. Okay, clarify what you mean there, because I almost get the implication that you're talking about spending taxpayer dollars to I don't know, boost up the smaller communities, in that, oh, the government is going to build this new job center in XYZ neighborhood,
no, no. So what I would be
or
interested in
schools.
is incentivizing new housing projects within the inner city, incentivizing
Okay.
businesses to move in, especially like grocery things, figuring out what the best solution to the problem of public schools in high density areas is at the moment. So then you are creating populations who are much more likely to make good decisions and then go on to enter through their own merit a higher paying job, which means they're paying more into income tax than they otherwise would have been. They're generating more wealth, they're consuming more products. And, like, I mean, when you have a wealthier, more productive lower class, all of that money, because of the way capital works, flows upstream and creates higher quality of life for everyone at the top as well. Like, everyone benefits when more production is occurring and more demand is appearing,
Okay. You talking
because you're
about
increasing supply and
you,
demand
you talk.
generally.
Okay, you're talking about. It sounds like that you're talking about subsidizing housing and even certain stores and grocery stores within these poorer communities.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be subsidized. You could give them tax breaks for moving into those areas. There's a lot Trump
Oh,
or
okay.
tax some Trump joint tax credits. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it.
Well, that's
I'm not
something that we can
saying that.
agree upon, because I generally don't like taxes. Like I'm not an outright ANCAP myself, although a lot of my fans would say that I should. But nonetheless, um, I'm not an outright ANCAP, so I do believe in some taxes to pay for court systems to make sure people get their due process in case somebody invades on another person's natural rights and so forth. But ultimately,
Mhm.
yeah, if a poor person should get tax breaks. I mean, equally speaking, I believe that the tax rates should be lower for rich people. I believe all people's taxes should be lower, generally
Yeah, I
speaking.
wasn't saying necessarily lowering the tax rates of low income people. I was saying, like, giving credits to businesses that move into that area, so that they are paying less in taxes for investing into uh, a market that, with like tax rates and stuff, otherwise wouldn't be as profitable. Not necessarily like creating a public housing or public grocery store. And though if data showed that that was more productive, then I would be in favor of it. But I'm
So,
just trying to get at least you to agree on the problems before we talk about solutions necessarily.
if I am to understand you more correctly, um,
Mhm.
basically you think that or attempt to move into a higher, a more sophisticated area of town that they should get a tax break for that.
Well, it wouldn't be a more sophisticated area. I'm talking about businesses moving into inner cities and
Okay,
servicing
okay.
inner city areas. Yes.
Small businesses.
Specific, but maybe small businesses. But you could incentivize that within the black community. You can't if they and there's both on both sides of the political spectrum have done this where mean testing where they get grants either for education or something if they start a small business within that community and things like that,
So,
which I would be
if I may
open to. But
interject, because I'm
yeah,
still trying to understand your idea here. You're talking about giving tax breaks to a business to build a shop into this poorer area. Like, hey, there's this open plot of land in, excuse me, there's this open plot of land in this poorer area right here. Build a building right there for business, and we'll make the property taxes on that building lower because it's a poorer part of town.
um,
Is that am I understanding that correctly?
sort of. I think that that was a simple. I don't necessarily know if property tax is the best way or tax credits on gross profit gains or what specifically would be the most efficacious way of it. But I
That
mean,
is just the most
I,
practical tax break that I can think of. I'm sure that there might be other types
okay,
of tax breaks a person could feasibly
yeah,
apply for a person moving
yeah,
into a poorer area, but I'm thinking like property
but
taxes in regards of
yeah.
moving to certain areas.
But I guess the reason that I'm thinking of other ones as examples too is because you'd want to specifically incentivize the things that are lacking with in the inner city, not just it, any business at the moment, because at the moment there's specific issues that need to be addressed, and whatever thing would be most appealing to those to most likely encourage that behavior occurring is like what I'm saying.
Okay. Um, I'm thinking that maybe we should wrap it up here pretty soon, but I want to address the chat just one more time before we do it. I'm going to have to re listen to this and definitely read back on some of the sources that we threw back and forth at each other a bit. Um,
Yeah.
um, oh, red I think Red Feather. This is. Mm, Jay Will, I hope DarkCon will ask him. I think Red Feather is referring to this question, if I remember, if I'm looking at it correctly. Why were black families in America doing better prior to the civil rights movement and affirmative action?
um there's a variety of possible explanations. One includes like the drug criminalization under Nixon as a possibility. Redlining is another thing that we
Mm,
covered. Um,
right, because
those,
the drug war. Let's not forget that it started happening right after Jim Crow. So, yeah, I
yeah,
guess that's a
and redlining also did. Yeah, I would say that those are big factors in it, and those are the ways in which we greatest see
you know
like the disparity between the two groups.
I would also say that offering up welfare was a bit of a contributor to it as well. And the reason why I say that is because, just as a more modern example, Barack Obama took out the work mandate for applying for food stamps. And after he did that, the labor participation rate dropped down a bit. And not just for old people, by the way. Well, actually, old people remained fairly steady, but middle class
Yeah,
and especially, or not, excuse me, not middle class, middle age and especially younger aged people, particularly, they started dropping out of the labor force more immediately after that. How is it nowadays? I do not know if it went up or down ever since Trump
yeah.
took office, but nonetheless, that's a more
Well,
modern
yeah.
example. And by extension of that example, I would say that I would take a guess that that is what happened back during with LBJ. As soon as he started offering up more and more welfare, more and more people started, and I guess disproportionately black people decided to take up on more welfare and work less just so that they could like keep more and more welfare benefits, because the thing with welfare is if you work more you get less benefits. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would slightly disagree with that conclusion on the basis that Trump's major economic policy change was the income tax credit, and that we saw the economy improve and workforce participation increase, um, leading into his presidency, even prior to that being passed. So that Obama's policies, in general, seemed to increase workforce participation
Well, wait a minute, increase
over
workforce.
time.
Wait a minute. Are you
Yes,
saying workforce participation or non-participation?
participation. We were at a dangerously low unemployment. We didn't even have frictional unemployment, and the only economic policy domestically that Trump really passed was the income tax credit. So most of these policies were playing out as a result of Obama's economic policies.
Well, I do not know of what else Obama might have done, but I'm just pointing out the taking out the work mandate as an example of at least what happened in the short term, anyways. Like maybe there was
Yeah.
something that, and I wouldn't even like pin it on Obama specifically. If any, generally speaking, I've been of the belief that anything good that happened within the economy was more in spite of Obama rather than because of Obama. I mean, maybe there was something that happened within the economy that counterbalanced against his repealing the work mandate. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if something counterbalanced it later on in the Obama years, because I have no doubt at all that the economy was doing a bit better off in his second and the later parts of his second term as compared to his first term. I mean, take a look at the fracking boom.
Yeah, and I mean it was going better into Trump's prior to Trump passing any legislation
Right,
in regards
I
to economic
agree.
policies.
I agree, and believe me, I don't believe at all that Trump is a great businessman when it comes to public policy. He might be a good enough businessman with in his own businesses, in spite of like
Yeah, maybe.
in spite of
Maybe.
with a very select few of his business practices, because let's keep in mind that a lot of his businesses did go down under, but there's like, I don't know, one or two that was ended up successful. But anyway, that wasn't my point.
Yeah.
My point was,
Okay.
I agree, he is not economically that economically savvy in the public sector of things.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
anything good that, although there was one executive action, and by the way, I'm also typically against executive actions, but there was one executive action that he did in the earlier parts of his first term, where he lifted regulations against hemp, so that people could make things with hemp, clothes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was a very
Yeah.
good Hill article that I had read a while back.
Yeah. That might have also, I could grant that probably did impact, at least to some degree, the employment numbers, but I don't well, I guess I'd have to look more into that. It is possible that it was the like thing that tipped it over, but it would be very strange for one market to have solely accounted for all of that.
Incredible Aspie is in my side of the chat. Hello, Aspie. Not just the drug war, but also the fact that many wealthy black employers left the black community stagnating their economy. Hmm. Oh, okay. Oh, come on, JC. The guest is kind of an idiot. Come on, be nice. He's not that bad. Like, hey, he gave me more of a challenge on abortion than anyone else beforehand. And I like to think that I am like fairly savvy when it comes to abortion, generally speaking. Anyways,
Can you ask JC why I'm stupid?
but
Ask why I'm an idiot. I want to know.
I guess. Okay. JC, why do you say that GabeisGunk, my guest here, is kind of an idiot? But, wait. There's also more to her chat comment. The guest is kind of an idiot, but he is right about how badly the drug war affected blacks in the U.S. Okay.
Okay. So they just don't like my politics. That's fine.
I have to call people stupid just because they have a differing belief on politics. It's if they say something ostensibly incorrect, where I get to thinking that they're an idiot. Like, I literally had people say before that unborn babies are literally not human and not alive, and that's where I'm thinking, you dumb motherfucker. But of course, you didn't say that, so that's good.
Yeah, but the reason that they do that is because it's a very difficult moral argument to explain how you justify not having postnatal. They like to define children as, or babies in the womb, as something separate from being alive and conscious. But I don't like I said, I don't personally think that they even have to make the moral argument for it, because at least from what I had thought is that pragmatically, like, less abortions occur when abortion's legal, and that there are other ways that we can decrease the likelihood of them occurring. But we've already gone over that. Yeah.
I'm looking here. Hello, I am Aaron. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me about that. Estimates of the number of illegal abortions in the United States in the 1950s and 1960s range from 200,000 to 1.2 million per year. Okay, well, 200,000 does not hardly compare to 800,000 to what we have today, but 1.2 million a year, yeah, that is a rather big number. Ultimately, I would say citation needed, but this might be the link that they were providing to suggest that.
Link. Yeah. Obviously,
maybe I'll look into that later. It also says in 2015 of 91% abortions were performed within the first trimester. At this point, the baby is not even a fetus yet. Well, after the 10-week and even after the 8-week mark, they are a fetus. That is what I have from dictionaries and even health textbooks on pregnancy.
Well,
that's when they become a fetus.
10 weeks would almost be at the end of the first trimester, so it's possible that
I thought the first trimester
weeks,
ended later,
3
like
months.
at 13 weeks or something like that.
Even if I were to grant that it's 13 weeks, it's possible, because bodies don't like gestation periods don't occur consistently, that while most are developed as a portion of them are developed as fetuses at 10 weeks, that most is at 13 weeks. And then that still doesn't mean that 91% of those abortions occur after that point where they've become fetal. It could be earlier into the third trimester.
Well, from what I've remembered of doing the math on CDC statistics, within the all abortions within the first trimester, it adds up to 50 or maybe even 60%, not as high as 91%. Like, holy crap, that sounds hyperbolic.
I wonder if it's in that same link, though.
Yeah, I mean, and also let's keep in mind that I want to take the cap all the way down to 7 weeks. First of all, which is well before the end of the first trimester, anyways. Which the amount of abortions that happen before the 7-week period is something around 30 to 35%. And even if, say, for example, all the abortions that I am totally not okay for and can totally make the legal argument against, if after the 7-week period or something like that, even if that percentage adds up to only 20, 30 or some other minority percentage, I still want to get rid of those nonetheless. I mean, call it petty for whatever you want to, but it still adds up to tens of thousands, or no, not just tens of thousands, but even hundreds of thousands of abortions that happen. And by that extent, anti-child trafficking activists, they always go, and rightfully so, go complaining and doing actions against child trafficking, and that adds up to what, like a few tens of thousands of children, which is horrible, mind you. But all the same, I'm bring up the numbers to put things into perspective as to why people would care for certain subjects. And also well, never mind. I'm not going to bring up that example. More things like getting to the race part of the live stream. Hello, I am Aaron.
Okay.
Says black represent 19% of drug users. I think that is lower than what I've even vaguely heard asserted. And are
well, that
100.
that would make sense because he's talking about the total population, and if blacks are what 13% of the
Oh
population,
yeah.
about the same
Okay, yeah.
rate as whites.
You're
Yes.
right. I guess I must have been getting numbers mixed up. If you're talking about the percentage of drug users, well then, yeah, black people seem to be equally representative between, how much of the population, general population that they make up, and how much of the drug users that they make
Drug
up.
users, because
I guess I
blacks
was
and whites
thinking.
use it at about the same rate.
I guess I was thinking
So-
like a per capita rate, like 100,000 black people versus 100,000 white people, rather than the percentage
Oh
of the.
yeah, no. Whatever the 100,000 versus 100,000 of the other is going to be very close to each other.
It's going to
very
be more
similar.
like 50-50 or 40-40 or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
and are
yeah,
125% more likely to be charged with possession of marijuana. I will agree and admit that the drug war is one of the more difficult sides of the systemic racism debate that I don't even vaguely know enough to respond to.
So
Go on.
Is that this is like one of the places where it's the clearest, because blacks are more frequently arrested for marijuana, even though they use marijuana at the same rate. They then contribute to the higher crime statistic, the 1350 thing. And so they're being disproportionately arrested for a crime that they commit at the same rate as whites. And then that, like, removing even just the criminalization of marijuana would have pretty major impacts on those communities. Ideally beneficially, because then that means that like a dad isn't spending 8 months in jail for a couple grams of weed, which I would hope, based on your libertarian stuff, that you're not in favor of people having to do.
No, of course not. I'm against the drug war, whether or not it is technically racist or not. But the one thing that I have heard asserted, at least, I haven't actually looked into the research of it, although I would presume that there is research into this. But the only reason why it would end up looking like black people getting more often incarcerated for certain drug possessions as opposed to white people is because the black person ends up getting charged with, or even caught, doing more in-your-face stuff than just drug use or drug possession. Like you mentioned the murder rate, for example. There, they get arrested not just for a homicide, but they also get arrested for a drug offense at the same time, and so that contributes to the inflated number of black people getting incarcerated for drugs.
Possibly for the so another statistic is that the 4 times as likely, that 125% as likely, probably is the statistic when they account solely for what they were charged with. So there's still a disproportionate amount, even when you control for the charges being the same,
right?
Which is definitely the case for some drugs.
I'll have to. Let's also keep in mind, I mean, marijuana, but I want to like shift it to another drug that gets, tagged on by the drug war, like crack cocaine or even powder cocaine. I do not remember what the exact terms of them are. But powder cocaine gets you less of a sentence than crack, like hard
Yeah.
cocaine,
Uh,
which
yeah, at
black
one
people, I
point,
don't.
100 times less of a sentence.
Yeah,
Currently now the discrepancy is 18 to 1.
which I was about to say. Like, I do not know why this is a thing, but apparently, black people more often use crack cocaine as opposed to powder cocaine, which is more typically used by white people. I do not know why that's all their preferences. I'm not a drug user, so I wouldn't know
Well,
shit.
because crack cocaine is cheaper, but regardless, because of drug
Ah.
usage rates, powder cocaine and crack cocaine are used at about the same rates in the whole population of both of those demographics. It's within inner cities that we see a greater disproportionate amount of crack cocaine usage because that is a lower income area where whites are also more likely to use crack cocaine.
Right, that's understandable enough. And then there's also more people that.
Furthermore, the
What?
the DEA distinction between powder and crack cocaine, because they're chemically similar. Typically, when it's charged, it's based on field test results. That allows for a lot of discretion in the way in which the original arrest can cite the charge.
Mm-hmm.
Because chemically they're nearly identical. The difference is that crack cocaine no longer has its base.
Right. And by the way, to answer your question that you posed to JC Armitage, well, he is, and hello, Toya ain't nice in the live chat. Just now notice you. JC Armitage also said, well, he is quite the status. So, although keep in mind, I wasn't here for the whole stream. I dipped out at some points.
Oh,
Okay. Well, I don't know.
yes.
I guess it's how heavily.
fine.
I guess it's how heavily pro statist air quotes that you are that she's making that judgment. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Which
fine.
again, I don't condone, people. I do not condone.
No, they're okay. They can.
But I was gonna make one more point, but I think I'm just gonna move on with the chat because we are like past 3 hours right now.
Okay.
Also,
Yeah,
can
you're
we
correct.
all just put it out there that the war on drugs is inherently racist and that pot should be federally legalized? Pot should be federally legalized. Inherently racist, I would disagree because it's not like in text that it says if you are black, you're definitely going to get
Wait.
more sentenced.
That would be explicitly racist. Inherently means that the character and the outcomes that it played out in makes it racist.
Okay.
Would you agree? Would you agree that it disproportionately affects minorities?
Yes, but I do not.
Okay.
I do not know.
But you
Okay,
don't know
the
whether or
Nixon,
not
the
they
Nixon,
intended to
the
do it,
Nixon.
that.
Yes, Nixon. I
Though I
will
would say
say
that Nixon.
Nixon.
Yeah.
I will say he was definitely intending it for some racist agenda because there are some quotes of him saying that he has problem with mixed race babies. Like he disagrees with the idea of abortion, but mixed race babies, yeah, go ahead and abort them, basically.
Yeah, and he also, in
So-
originally drawing the legislation, cited like the Yellow Papers, and that newspaper writer was overtly racist as well.
So
I mean, for someone's intent, but there's a lot of evidence that allows you to inductively reason that it's possible that Nixon did it on a racial basis.
yeah, and like I said, like I was trying to get out, Nixon was using it for a racist motive. I'll definitely agree. I just do not know if nowadays it is intended on a racist motive. And I guess I'm going to go ahead and make this point nonetheless. When the legislation was put forth in the 80s to make it harder sentencing on crack cocaine as opposed to powder cocaine, it was like 11 black congressmen that voted for that as opposed to 10 black congressmen that voted against it. So
Yes.
I don't know if I'm convinced that it's some point of white people hating black people. It sounds wait. It
those congressmen.
It sounds more.
I-
It sounds more like black people trying to prioritize their own community a little bit, which I won't say is outright racist, but nonetheless. Sorry, you were about to say?
Those congressmen later would, and even congressmen on the white side would later come forward and say that they regretted passing that legislation based on the way that it disproportionately impacted the African American communities.
Sorry, I was about to get to addressing the next live chat. I haven't looked at. Aaron is like doing a sum up quote of me saying, I haven't looked into the specific economic disparities between races, but here, let me tell you about how blacks have equal privilege to whites. It's more of an assumptuous assertion that I was doing more than anything. I mean, wait, I guess I'm just a racist. What the fuck? Sorry, I did not mean to like come off that way. I'll have to definitely look into it more, but looking down at black people as inferior or anything else like that. I mean, and it's just my, it was just my guess as to what, it was just my guess as to how that, what was I gonna say? Still
As to why that played out.
diverting my attention to two places at the same time. You do that, you're going to get totally scatterbrained. But nonetheless, it was my assumption as to what the stats add up to, which, if anything, I would say it makes me look more like a jackass than a racist, if anything.
Yeah, well, I could see his point in that, like, that the bias played into stereotypes, but I know that you were just trying to think on your feet, kind of thing.
Dark conservatarian, he can't afford. What? Who are we referring to?
I don't know. It's a rando. I'm pretty sure they were just trying to bait, so that's why I just told him who knows.
Yeah, I don't know, but
because your name's Dark, like you're in the dark.
Oh, so I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, can't afford the electricity bill. It's just that I prefer the lights out. I prefer to wear the
based
black.
on the fact that you're currently talking to me via the internet.
Right, it's just anyway, aside from that silliness, Gabe, I'm out, but I will leave with the recommendation that you future debaters need to provide a list of links that support their arguments before the debate begins. It says Aaron, and I will admit that I did not kind of expecting this to be kind of laid back a little bit, because I had I had a feeling that Gabe was not coming in scorched earth, rolling thunder, or anything else like that. But I probably should have come with like offhand, actually having the articles, the sources, with me.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
Yeah. It would have been nice if you had a few of them so that you could easily pull them up. But I don't think that you did anything wrong. I think it went fine.
I was just more like
laid back.
I was just more like going vaguely off of what I remember as far as the abortion argument goes, and I guess with the systemic racism debate, or the portion of this discussion anyways, I guess I'll have to definitely look more into it than what I have before. So
yeah, I definitely recommend looking into it a little bit more, because there are, and I'll send you the stuff about the stickiness on the ends and the declining in economic class thing. But yeah, is there anything else?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, some people are posing their own arguments. I do not know if they're trying to necessarily get your attention, but posing their own statements and arguments in my live chat.
Well, tell them I'll debate them right now. I'll debate all of you right now.
Excuse me. JC Armitage says Nixon wanted marijuana associated with hippies and heroin associated with blacks. Oh, okay. Yeah, because it's not just black people. It's like political enemies as well. That's what I've generally heard in regards of what people pose Nixon's argument or motive to be. As for half the black senators voting yes on the drug war, I did not say half of black senators. I said like 11 black representatives versus 10 representatives. Like they were in the House of Representatives, not the Senate. Voting yes on the drug war, that's just politicians making bank notes off the misery of those outside the political class. Nothing new here. Which is fair enough, JC, but that wasn't exactly my point here. It was still rather authoritarian for anybody to be voting for a harsher crackdown on crack cocaine nonetheless. I was just making the point that because of those amount of black people voting for it as opposed to this amount of black people voting against it, it seems to be that there wasn't necessarily a racial hatred motive on that front when it comes to the drug war. Just that one single facet.
Yeah, possibly. Or that it wasn't overwhelmingly apparent that it was going to have a disproportionate racial impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess that's it. Anyways, so anything that you have to say in closing?
I had a lot of fun talking to you. I appreciate it. I know that I did yell at you a little bit during the abortion part, but I love you.
Oh, no homo, right?
What? No, it's just fraternal love, brotherly love.
No, I gotcha.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to talk to you.
Yeah, and I guess I will have to. I should have clarified a little bit better on the whole front of me talking about the ratios, per capita breakdown of how many abortions happen. I guess it is important to look at things generally as per capita, but I guess the reason why I wasn't taking that into consideration is because I don't find per capita to be the make or break thing that determines as to whether or not I think that abortion should be banned, generally speaking. Anyways,
yeah, because you'd want the number to be 0, and I understand that,
or
but like in terms
practically 0, because it's not going to be
0.
an absolute 0. Just be honest with myself.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I guess everyone here in my chat should check out the Dark Conservatarian. Give him subs, watch his videos. Anyone in Dark Conservatarian's chat that is still angry at me and wants to debate, it's twitch.tv/GabeisGunk, and we'll go do it.
My question is, how many on Gabe's end is angry at me?
I don't know. A lot of them jumped out. I don't know how many are angry. I think I Am Aaron had the strongest contentions against you, for sure.
I would think that.
But I don't think he was angry at you. Yeah.
I would think that one other person actually had a little bit more malice and anger. But nonetheless, I am going to end it on my end. I'd like to thank Gabe here for inviting me on this live stream. It was definitely challenging. He gave me a fighting challenge on the front of abortion. The violinist argument, I know personally that it's not quite that doesn't work. Just I do not know how to articulate how it doesn't work, and so therefore I think I kind of at least lost on that front when it comes to violinist. So sorry everybody who watches me for my abortion content in that front. But yeah, so Gabe, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for having me come on. And
yeah, thank you, dude.
Yep. So
hopefully we'll get to talk again someday.
Yep. I'd like to talk a little bit off air once we're done here. But anyway,
okay.
Everybody watching.
I'm on mute my story.